Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. I think this episode is number 6. And maybe we'll have, another episode where we can go, this is number 66. And hopefully we'll eventually get to 666, which is my favorite number. But thank everybody for joining us tonight. We have a great episode planned for you. We're going to talk about the legalization of Michigan marijuana. We're going to talk with a street epistemologist about helping to have a conversation to decompress street epistemology. We're going to have a science segment on non-GMOs. And of course, Chris Hanna and I are going to tackle the Republican debate. If you don't know who we are Cellar Door Skeptics. And we hope that you are preparing for the revolution. But if you're not, by listening to this episode, it'll put you one step closer as we continue to push forward to the revolution. But without further ado, I got to introduce my most exciting co-host that I've ever had, Mr. Chris Hanna. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing pretty good. That was pretty close to some propaganda there, going towards the revolution. You're getting closer. We almost have you where we want you. It's going to be a good show. We got a lot of fun stuff. We got a little bit of variety that we're going to be hitting tonight. It's not just going to be one theme, so to speak. We've done a couple shows where we had that tied in. This is kind of bouncing around a little bit, but I like it when we do more than one specific topic. I think it gives a little bit for everyone to take a look at, get a listen to, and do some research, find out some stuff. Like GMO stuff I've talked about in the past, and it's a lot of fun. And Chris, obviously, you know this weed stuff. No, like nobody's nobody's business. You've been involved in the decriminalization in the past in Grand Rapids, and it's a good place for our state to be going. So we'll kind of see where we're at there. The epistemology stuff is new to me, and that was a pretty cool interview that you had there. I kind of sat in the background and watched over your shoulders and tried not to make too much noise to mess up the interview. But
yeah, some of the faces you were making, they definitely threw them off a little bit.
Oh, well, I mean, are we going to jump into the first segment, or do you have anything planned before that? Any other weirder interviews? You got any more propaganda for us?
I don't have any more propaganda. I have no more propaganda outside of the fact that I have to elicit Fallout 4 is coming out. So everybody be prepared. When Fallout 4 comes out, I will probably be very tired and stumbling through these interviews because I can tell you what, that's my favorite game ever. But without too much rhetoric, I mean, nobody gives a shit what video games I play, really. Well, maybe they do, but for the most part, they probably don't give a fuck.
Maybe they want to come down on and pawn you when you do the online stuff.
Yeah, they want to come pawn me.
That's the only gaming word I know. I don't play games online. I just can't get it. My online screen name should have been "Doesn't Play Well with Others," but.
So what we wanted to talk about was the Michigan marijuana laws, and I guess it's more about legalization for the whole country, but. One of the big things that has come about in Michigan has been decriminalization and medical marijuana. Back in 2008, they introduced medical marijuana, and it passed in the state of Michigan with over a 61% positive rating. So over 61% of the residents voted yes for proposition, and I don't remember what it was, but whatever that proposition name was. And it was amazing because it's one of those things where you go, holy shit, my state just medicalized marijuana. There's medical marijuana in Michigan. This is something that I dreamed about, since shortly after high school, something that you only hear about when you talk about California. And here we are in Michigan medicalizing in a red state, for fuck's sake. I mean, we're a red state.
I was going to say 61 something. I think that's more people, more consensus than what we had when we had the presidential election. Yeah, as far as our state.
Yeah, exactly. We never get consensus between the Reds and the Blues. It just never happens.
But put weed in there, man.
You put weed in there. Everybody must love weed in Michigan. Well, we're all farmers up here. We're all farmers. But
yeah.
The best part is I worked with a group called Decriminalize Grand Rapids, and we worked together to help decriminalize marijuana because the city was having an issue financially and a overcrowding issue in the jails. And so there's a lot of numbers and statistics, and they're still out there on Decriminalize GR. You can actually still go and find these numbers, at least of last month. And these numbers that you're going to find, what you're going to find inside of it is the fact that they were able to reduce the economy in Michigan, the expenditure in Grand Rapids, by $2.5 million. They were able to reduce the number of incarcerations of African Americans, and they were able to let police go handle more, I guess if you want to call it more dutiful serious crime, yeah, whatever that word is. They actually were able to spend time doing those things versus having to tackle possession. And some of the argument they try to claim, well, they just don't want us to do possession because, it takes a lot of time and, they want to take money out of our pockets. But the whole point of the movement was to help get rid of the stigmatization and the issues that went along with possession crimes for minorities and youth in that area. It was very high minorities of youth in the area could have loss of a scholarship just for a possession crime. So we asked for it to be decriminalized up to 1 ounce. So you could carry up to 1 ounce. Now, if you carried it in separate bags, you still got possession. If you tried to sell it, you still got possession. It didn't matter. You still got possession. But if you were just turning around and carrying it, it's just a civil infraction. You would get a ticket. It started out, I believe, at $75, then went to $100, and then I think it maxed out at $200 for every other offense. And the whole point of that was to stop prisoning for nonviolent crimes and to stop going after the minorities inside of Grand Rapids. But the best part was it saved the city $2.5 million. And that's a conservative estimate. But we were able to actually save the city that money. And I used to go door to door and people would be like, you're not going to save $2.5 million. You're not going to do it. And we're like, yes, we are. We're easily going to do that. That's going to happen. And I could break out the facts. I would break out the sheet and I'd be like, here's your facts. Yeah. You could go fact check this. Go ahead. Do it.
If you also consider there's just the specific dollars that you're saving there, but also think about the social, economic, and just the social effects of doing something like that. You're taking the kids who are getting in trouble for stuff like this. Let's face it, the inner city kids, the minorities in the area, those are the ones the cops are going to be policing the closest. Those are the ones more likely to be caught, not the suburban kids and the kids out in Forest Hills and out in Ada who probably smoke weed just as much. They're not getting caught. So what you're having more kids probably completing high school, not having these massive fines and not going to jail. Let's say they're completing high school. Maybe they're able to get a better job. Those kinds of things. You don't have this really stupid little thing that you get caught for that could potentially send you off on a lifetime of not working, of being a detriment to society. You can finish high school, you get into the workforce. Let's say you can use marijuana recreationally in the future. That's awesome. So you're saving that $2.5 million, but you're also bettering the life of people who may be trying to for class mobility, trying to get out of that poor area and get into the middle class and be part of blue collar middle class America. But all these things like the marijuana laws, they help keep people in those bottom classes. They help create lines in our society, and I think it's a great thing that we actually got out of that.
Yep. And so what I wanted to do, we're going to start a segment, and you named the segment, so I'll let you say it.
Okay, it's good. For each month, we're going to try to do one of these segments. So it's going to be just this month on pod.
And so this month on pod, we're going to start out by tackling some of the common issues that we're already seeing from a prosecutor. And of course, as a prosecutor, right?
Yeah,
this is his livelihood, for fuck's sake. Hey, I can go after kids, I can go after adults, I can go after people smoking pot, and this is an easy crime I could tackle. It's nonviolent. I mean, people settle all the time. People do all these things all the time. So for them, it's an easy issue. It's an easy fucking out. And so I thought, well, what's happening is, and I'll tell a little story, and I don't want to go too long, but what's happening was when I did the decriminalize thing, I asked, why are we decriminalizing? Why don't we legalize? What is wrong with us? Why as a state do we have to do that? Why don't we just legalize everything? The answer was it takes more to legalize, and then fund-wise, to actually get a campaign going, takes a heck of a lot more. There's a lot more money that goes into the funding of a campaign for legalization than it does for a campaign for just decriminalizing. There's a lot more stigma to it. There's all sorts of different things. So
they can put a price tag on that. Like politics has basically been broken down to, listen, if you got $10 million, there's a good chance, like a 60-70% chance you can legalize it in your city. Like, that's insane to me. That if you got enough money, you can just buy what you want. on something like weed that
Yeah.
works.
But it
that's
goes
the way
with all
it
the
is.
other ones. You know that it's not just weed. Any political system you can buy into. It's a how much money can you put in front of ads, how much positive revenue. And actually, it's funny because the article we're about to talk about has that same discussion. The exact same discussion comes up, except for he only addresses it from one side. It's a one-sided argument. But the best part about it is when they talked to us about it, they were like, hey, if we can hit a 61 to 65%, we're going to come in and we put money into the system because we're sure that this will pass. We don't want to put money into a system that's not going to pass. And so there's the same thing with legalization. They're not going to do it unless there's a certain percentage that we have to hit before they attempt to legalize. So there's actually 2 ballots on the system. Tonight we're not going to talk about what those ballots entail. That's going to be next month or maybe 2 weeks, whatever floats my boat. So that's the thing, though. There's 2 ballots being put out right now, and we have to be very careful which one we're going to vote for because we want to make sure we vote for the one that's going to be more beneficial. And I will break down and I will analyze both of those ballots for you in the next coming month because this is a very important topic to me because it hits home on so many other aspects. It's not just because I want to get high. I don't care about that. It's because we're seeing oppression come to minorities and to youth. And the youth can have their whole lives ruined for a joint. You get a misdemeanor, you can ruin your life. You have a little bit more than that, you get a felony, you can lose all your school funding. You can lose everything. It's amazing.
You never get to vote, man.
Yeah.
You can never be part of any kind of our political processes. I mean, you're essentially removing someone from any kind of useful influence or voice in our society.
Yes. And so that's the reason why I think, part of the reason why I think it should be legalized is because I want to help reduce the stigma. But tonight there was an MLive article, and this article came out, I don't know, probably a couple weeks ago. It was the 29th. I guess it wasn't even a couple weeks ago. It was from Charlevoix, or Charlevoix, or however you say that county.
You got it.
And it says, it was written by John Yeager, and he says, if marijuana is legalized in Michigan, this prosecutor, Alan Tegenhoff, says the availability will certainly lead to more children using drugs, harmfully development, and leading to dependency. That is the beginning of the article. And so I sat there and I said, what the heck is this? What is this? Why is this on MLive? Why are they putting this out for people to read? And so they went through. So basically, this gentleman named Alan, he's a county prosecutor. And he wrote a huge, very long blog that we're going to get into in just a second. And he basically wrote all about this. And MLive decided to cover it. And instead of providing any sort of bias, they just basically quoted him. All they did is take his blog and minimize it. Their second paragraph goes like this. The bottom line is that although other states may be moving forward, led by a well-funded pro-marijuana lobby, Michigan should not fall in line with that. And I sat there and I'm sitting here thinking, what the fuck? Why this is a very biased article. They're honestly just quoting him. The whole article is just literally quoting him. But I don't understand why they don't honestly want to take a look at the actual facts. So I said, screw the MLive article. I'm going to dig deeper, right? I'm going to actually go to this guy's blog. And Alan, if you actually do listen, and yes, I will tag you in this new episode, I am proposing you join me on my show. Let's have a conversation about this. Let's vet your concerns. Look at what you want to talk about and see if maybe you even have a valid voice.
Bring your resources.
Bring your resources. We'll get to that in a second. So he wrote a blog on October 19th, and he wrote it on his personal website. And he intros his blog by saying, in 2012, 63% of Michigan voters approved medical marijuana. I think he's wrong. I thought it was 2008. And maybe I'm wrong in that statistic that the medical marijuana happened that quick. But he says at least 2 state proposals will go in. And then he goes, I think legalization is inevitable, but maybe it's time that we pull back a bit. Maybe it's time we look at medical marijuana and how it's going to work with our state. And what experiences happened in Colorado, one of the states that has legalized. And I sat there and I thought, okay, hold on, right? There is all sorts of stuff we need to look at. And in his article, he goes through an initiative about how medical marijuana was not actually used to help those who need it. But then he admits it is. So he admits it is. He doesn't actually provide a statistic that says how many people have cancer in the state. or how many people are diagnosed with hepatitis C, or glaucoma, or Crohn's disease, or Lou Gehrig's disease. He just tells us what percentage of people are not using what he calls a loophole. And we can discuss that in a minute, whether it's really a loophole or not. But he's talking about basically people who can get medical marijuana cards for severe and chronic pain. And this is a big deal, everybody. He's accusing the state and people in the state of abusing the law that was created to help those who had a serious need. And while I'll admit the law was not designed very correctly, I guess if you want to call it that. Strictly. And it didn't flesh out a lot. It was a very small law. It was set up honestly to prevent a bunch of different issues that could have happened from it. But it doesn't mean that people are abusing this. That's not what this means.
Well, no matter what you do on a law like this, you're going to have people that are going to be there's going to be people who technically are abusing it. They may not need it as bad as some of the really bad cases, but think about it in human nature. Name some things where some people don't go and get as much as they can, don't push the boundaries and try to stretch it and try to get what they want and put in, and maybe sometimes cheat a little bit. But you have to weigh the overall good. Think about the people that are in chronic pain disease scenarios. I mean, especially the cancer one. My grandfather or my uncle right now is dealing with cancer in Canada, like stomach cancer. Like it's really, really tough, and he won't even consider marijuana or whatever. But there are people who there's no appetite. They're in utter misery, and there's no hunger. There's no need. They have to drink these horribly tasting like shakes or something. That's the only way they can get their calories in. It's just super high calorie shakes that are disgusting because they have no appetite. Like marijuana and things like that can boost these things. They have natural pain killing remedies and stuff. It works for a lot of people, and the good that those people get versus the few people who are like, oh, my back hurts, I've got back pain, I'm gonna kind of see if I can get this, and they manage to get their stuff. Really, I think that outweighs the negative abuse that the prosecutor is mentioning.
Yeah, but what you're saying though is you're challenging his facts.
Yes.
So if we actually look at what he's saying and the percentages he's adding up, he's saying 4% of medical marijuana patients are treated for cancer, 1.7 for hepatitis C, 1.4 for glaucoma, 1.1 for Crohn's, and 0.04 for Lou Gehrig's. So he's talking literally about less than 10% of the population. So he's saying 90% of the population are abusing it. So you're telling me that 10% outweighs the 90%.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you're telling me. And he would argue with you and say, well, that 10% does not. I would argue differently, saying that even if there was one person with cancer, if everybody abused marijuana, well, fuck it, who cares? That person's got cancer. Yeah. We should legalize it for that person. But some of the other topics he brings up in the article is he says patients, 93.7% of these patients are all diagnosed with severe chronic pain. And then he says, you know what the biggest issue is? He goes into the different issues he has with it, because he basically is trying to say Colorado has done something and it's fucked it all up, and that they don't have the results that they keep telling everybody they have. And so his whole point is that we should pull back as a state. We shouldn't do this. We should be cautious. We should walk into this cautiously, because he's saying it's being abused. But then he's going to tell you not just because it's abused, but because the effects of it or the helpfulness or what it'll do to the economy is not what you would expect. So
he's refuting the tax income?
Well, he does that. Oh, yes. He does that.
That's an argument that I've heard most. But we have a guy that we used to talk with every once in a while, John Moseman. That was his big thing. He's like, oh, those taxes aren't real numbers. That's all a lie and stuff. So
yes.
We had some disagreements there a few times.
So what he does is he says that basically, basically, the loopholes are what's helping to reduce it. So by legalizing it, he says that they're going to have to spend all sorts of money to help get it on the ballot, which it already is. It's already on the ballot. They've already put it on there. He said, in Denver, Colorado, the largest city in Colorado, overall crime has increased 6.7% since 2014. So that's what he's saying. He also says that it has reduced the amount of marijuana arrests, obviously since 2014. but crime has increased. He says, so even if tax revenues were markedly up, the question becomes, does the money justify the decrease in public and safety? So while at first he says, well, eventually marked up, he uses, precursor words is what I call them. And he's using these precursor words to help bring apart his point. And that's what he's doing. And so that's the biggest thing is pot sales will generate more money. But at what cost? He wants to know at what cost will this produce issues.
Well, I looked up the numbers from, this is a Huffington Post article, and the 7% they say that there are 35 different types of crime, and there's two ways that crime is reported. Is the FBI has a Uniform Crime Reports Unit, and the National Incident-Based Reporting Systems is another one that is used. The NIBRS, the second one that I mentioned, is generally considered more credible. The Denver Police Department uses the NIBRS, and this is how they put together the comprehensive numbers. And they said of the 35 different types of crime, the rates are up 7%. But here's the thing: what kind of crime do you think it is? Like, what do you think is going through the roof? Okay, well, some of the crime rate numbers that you had mentioned there, that he had mentioned in there, I'm on a Huffington Post website page right now. They had an article that crime is tracked through two reporting mechanisms: the National Incident-Based Reporting Systems, the NIBRS, and then also the FBI. It's the Uniform Crime Reports. And the NIBRS, the first one I mentioned, is the one that's generally regarded as more credible. And the Denver Police Department uses the NIBRS as their method of reporting. So it's more detailed and comprehensive for their numbers. Their statistics, they're summing up all the crime types, all 35, and the crime rate is up 7% compared to the same period last year. Well, interesting enough, like, what do you think it is? Like, is it violent? Is it more murders? Well, the biggest one is public drunkenness is up 237%. And
so is it drunkenness and weed violations or just drunkenness?
Well, that's what we would have to get in even further. We'd have to actually go to Denver's police reports, and they would probably break that down specifically. But I mean, let's just take a quick. I'm going to take a few assumptions here that we've got a city like Denver that is now legally open to something like this. They're probably dealing with an insane amount of drug tourism, and I would say that public drunkenness is people coming from other places getting ripped in public, and that's going to be a big source of where Denver's a big city, but 237% increase in something like that's going to change your overall rate numbers. So, and drug violations are up 20%, and so those are obviously going to be harder drugs. So we've got tourism and things like that are probably going to increase those numbers, and that's why I would say some of that 7% is coming from. It's not a 7% increase across the board for like murders and carjackings and rapes. So what we could potentially do is see if we could find the Denver numbers, and we'll put that in the link, and maybe you guys can take a look and see what the specifics for the reporting lines are. But just that one big one is 237%. Well, that's huge.
That's not his only argument, though, Chris.
Yeah,
just so you know, that's just the beginning one. I mean, he's got another 20 pages worth of bullshit on his blog.
It's like a 10,000 word blog.
Yeah. So his next one is he basically goes and attacks adolescents. And this is one of my bigger points that I'm very against. I don't think young kids should smoke pot. I don't. I think it's stupid, and it does inhibit their brain to grow correctly. And I agree with that. But basically, he says that adolescents are higher. And he says, a recent study, but he doesn't tell me what study. He just says there's a recent study. So you tell me how the hell I'm supposed to know that. Then he goes on to say, well, according to the Institute of Medicine, adolescents, especially troubled ones, and people with psychotic disorders are more likely to use marijuana and become dependent on it. It's like, well, hold on a second. There's no known cases of dependency. I don't know what he's talking about. But he doesn't actually post a link. He just posts a journal. He doesn't even tell us what the link is. Where's the article for it? He has 0 links. And so that's my biggest problem with this whole thing is I'm open to changing my mind. But if you can't give me links, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you, you piece of shit. Because how am I supposed to figure this out?
The best way to get him to change your mind is just to go after him that hard. But
well, okay, how about this? Instead of saying fuck you, Alan, I challenge you to join me on my show.
Yes.
I am calling you out. Join me in your show. Let's discuss
And we won't
those
swear at you.
statistics. I will not swear at you the whole show. I will give Chris a taser so he could tase me every time. So if my microphone goes silent, you know I'm fucking violently being tased on the floor. But seriously,
we'll
Alan,
put video of that up too.
a video of me being tased. Thanks, Chris. What a great co-host.
Hey,
But-
that's what I can do. I found the Denver Police Department statistics,
All right.
so we'll put that in the links, by the way.
Yep. Cool, awesome. So he keeps talking about legalization in Colorado and what it's done, and he's basically saying there's a declining percent of harm by children, which will increase the demand. So he's saying that the harm's going to go down because there'll be a decrease, but the demand will go up because there'll be more children that want it, but they can't get their hands on it. If kids want pot, they don't need to go to a store. They can just go get pot. You figure out where to get it from. You don't go to a store. That's not how you get it. When I wanted alcohol, I didn't walk into Myers or Target and go, hey, I like that fifth of liquor. Will somebody please buy this for me? No, I didn't fucking do that. Jesus. I had people that bought alcohol for me when I was underage. Not that I ever did that. But there was people that did that. You didn't go to the store to do it. So legalization is not going to do anything. It's not going to increase the amount of pot in the state. They don't even know how much pot's in the state because people aren't going to go, hey, by the way, I got 70 acres up north. I grow my marijuana and I sell it down to the inner. They don't say that. They don't tell you that. So they have no way of even measuring how much pot's in the effing state.
Yeah, that's one of my arguments is that when we do open it up to legalization, one thing you're going to get a much more conclusive idea of how much of this stuff is being used. And you're one thing the big argument for me for the nationwide legalization is you're essentially removing the creepy underground crime syndicate guy who sells your kids or sells your friends marijuana. That guy's going to be competing with a storefront that's got a decent, safe place to go and get your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I'll pay more to know I'm not dealing with a shady guy who might shank me at the end of the freaking thing because I got a little more money in my wallet than what I gave him for an ounce or something. That to me makes me much more likely and feel better about something like that. Like people being able to go to a storefront and get something like this. It's safer, better. So.
And the best part, though, is in leading in with your fear tactics, right, that you're just talking about, the fear aspect of it. Think about this. That's what he goes on to talk about in his article. He goes in to explain how back in the day, and I can hear this old man's voice, THC levels were 1.5% in the 80s and 5.4% in 2000 and 11% in 2010. But now the national average is 28%. And it's like, fuck you, dude. How the hell did they test that back then? Are you sure these are real numbers? Oh, if you provided a link, I could actually look at. Oh, but there's no link. Come on, man. You got to give us links. Then he goes on to tell you about the edibles and how the edibles have 80 to 90% extracts and THC levels in them. But he doesn't even understand how to extract it. He just says, well, you got to do it through butane gases and it's real dangerous and it's like methamphetamine houses. It's like, what? What are you talking about? You don't even know how to extract it. You're Googled it. This dude Googled this. He Googled how do I extract marijuana, and then he found this information. He's like, oh, I'm going to put this in here. And oh, hey, look, 32 houses exploded. Well, do you know that they exploded from butane gas? Is that exactly how they exploded? Do you know whether they were understood the actual aspect of how to set this process up? Maybe they're just idiots.
Yeah, maybe they watched one episode of Breaking Bad and they're like, I'm going to do that, man. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to be like Richard Pryor. You're going to be on fire and you're going to be running down the street.
Exactly. So he uses fear tactics to explain how marijuana THC levels have gone up. Well, technically, if that's the case, then weed usage goes down because you can only get so high, and at some point you're just too high to do anything. You just fall asleep. And then he goes on to explain that people are overdosing and jumping off balconies because of intoxication level because nobody has how much THC is in this cookie. And that's a fair point. I'll grant him that nobody knows exactly how much is in there because it's a lot harder to judge an edible than it is to judge an actual plant. But that doesn't mean people are jumping off the floor because of it. Did he post a link to say, hey, this is the oncology death? Oh, no, he just says the coroner listed marijuana intoxication as a significant contributor. Oh, but there's no link again. So I can't even go verify that or see what else was in his system. Because if the kid had PHP or acid or even alcohol, he could have easily jumped off a balcony. He could have been suicidal. Does he have a history of suicide? Oh, we don't know because you don't have a fucking link for me to go look at his medical record to even see what the hell you're talking about. So then he keeps going on and talks about how some man in Denver, and this story, like, and this is basically where I almost said this article is bullshit. Because this sounds like one of those IRC things that we talked about shit Chris used to believe way back in the day. Here's what he says. The same month, a Denver man ate marijuana-infused candy, then began hallucinating and talking about the end of the world to his wife and 3 young kids. The scared wife called 911, and while she was on the phone with the dispatcher, he shot her in the head and killed her. Do not smoke marijuana, kids, because it's bad for you and will make you kill your wife. Come on. Seriously? Oh, wait, guess what? Hey, Chris, you want to make a bet? I bet there's no link in here that I could even go look at this article. I bet I got to go Google this shit.
I know where he found the information. Do you remember the movie Reefer Madness? Heck yeah, dude. He was playing the piano. He was on speed. He was like chewing on cigar butts and swinging his hair around all crazy. Yeah, that's where a lot of these guys get their information. They Google and they go with the number one. Well, you know what's fun? I've seen so many people. I actually had to do a refutation on someone the other day. There are tons of satirical news sites that place fake stuff all the time. One of the things we're going to talk about on the show tonight at GMO, they said a kid died from a tomato that had fish genes in it. Well, guess what's the website that put that out? It's not a real website. It's all fake stuff. Marijuana has the same kind of stuff. So, you can't trust just what you find on the internet. You need a .org on there. You need a .gov because those sites are considered more stringent and they're much more difficult to find bad information. They have to be vetted and sourced and cited. This guy didn't even sort a .com for fuck's sake.
Yeah, he didn't cite anything. So he is an article, and we call this month in marijuana because it's this month. We don't want to spend a 2-hour episode talking about it, but I would, but it's probably boring to the rest of you. But he ends the article. This is how he ends the article. He says, "For me, it is enough to know that marijuana is legalized. More kids will use it. And that increased use by kids is harmful to their development, and they're much more likely to become dependent on it and other drugs as a result." And maybe we'd believe him if we had another link. We don't have another. We don't have another link.
Well, you know what I've got? I've got the denvergov.org information up here right now, and I see a 2.7% increase on their database that they have.
So it doesn't even comport.
Yeah,
to
it doesn't even
6.7.
seem as confirmed. They have crimes against persons, which has increased 8.8, but crimes against property has only gone up 2.9. Crimes against society is 14.5 increase, and that's the drugs, narcotics, prostitution, child porn. So and then all other offenses, that's gone down 5.5%. So the average on all is 2.7% increase. So that's what they have on Denver Gov's website. So it doesn't even sound like the overall number that they're citing. The 7% isn't even real.
And that makes me even more skeptical because then I would sit there and go, well, what has been the tourist increase and the population increase? And if those percentages combined equal more than the 2% increase, then I would be like, dude, this is bullshit. Like, you guys are just using statistics incorrectly.
For the crimes against society, they're seeing a 200% and 166% increase in child porn and prostitution. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Child porn is not going to be directly correlated to marijuana use. There's no way in hell you can tie that in there. Prostitution could possibly be because that would be a tourism thing. But really, I'm not seeing any major increases in anything that's going to be directly tieable to marijuana use.
Yeah. And so then after he tries to say, basically, if we legalize it, it's going to harm more kids, which I disagree with because they didn't have statistics back in the day to analyze what happened after they got rid of prohibition in the 40s. They didn't have it. Nobody calculated all this information out. But we didn't make alcohol illegal because we were worried about the kids. And we didn't legalize it because we were worried the kids were going to get it. Kids get alcohol. Kids are going to get pot, yes. If we're good parents, we'll understand how we can help deter them from using the substance at that time. We can explain to them the facts. We can educate them, yes. But we don't outlaw any other things just because kids can get it. We don't outlaw sex just because kids have it.
No, we just don't teach them at all, and then they do have it, and then they have
Yeah.
babies because they don't know anything about it.
And so it's illogical to think that we should outlaw marijuana based on that. It's I don't know. There's a fallacy for that.
I don't think banning ever really works on things like this.
No, prohibition does not work. Prohibition has proved itself to not work.
Mm-hmm.
But then he goes, there's an increase in the number of impaired drivers on the road, right? And then he says almost half, 48.4% of adults arrested in Denver tested positive for marijuana. Hospitalizations related to marijuana increased 82%. Now, and then he goes, but that's between 2008 and 2013, which doesn't correlate with his 2012 number, but hey, we'll let you pass on that because I don't have the energy to debunk that. But your hospital related to marijuana increases is 82%. I don't buy that. That's such a high number. Oh, and guess what? There's not a link. So now I got to go research this. I'm doing more work to read your article than I would to do any scientific paper. And the problem I have is we walk out of the segment is the fact that you're going to tell me hospitals increase and more adults are using it and there's more impaired drivers? How do you know that? Is there now a legal test to test if somebody's immediately high? If there is, why the hell do manufacturing plants not use this? I work for a multi-billion-dollar company. They have the money to invest in it. If that happened, they could save themselves so much money by sending somebody down. Oh, we could tell if you're really actually high right now? Oh, we could do that? But they don't have that. That doesn't exist. That's not in existence right now. There's no point where this has existed to the point of accuracy and is scientifically tested. So don't sit here and tell me that there's more impaired drivers on the road for marijuana. You don't have proof of that. You can't tell me that there's more people that are testing positive for marijuana, that it's actually in their system actively being used at the time, because you don't have a test for that. That has not been scientifically vetted yet. So don't tell me more people are being hospitalized because of it, because you don't know. They're just probably now testing it.
Breathe. Yeah, no, I agree definitely with you on that. Those tests aren't being used specifically. Those tests are not being used in these numbers. But as far as I know, they're working. I guarantee you, there's a lot of companies that are working on immediate marijuana tests. I don't know, like you said, they're not in existence. I don't know of any that have actually been used and proven that work. But I know they're working on it at least. Let's say they get it out, and that's a good way to deter it. Say, hey, okay, it's legalized, and we have a limit. We've got a level that you can travel around in. This is how we test it, and then we'll do the exact same thing we do with alcohol. We'll tax it. We'll make sure people aren't driving while impaired. And now where's your argument? Now what's the danger? You're going to go back to the children thing? That's really the only place they can go besides the morality issues, and those are on shaky ground to begin with. So, I don't know. If the guy comes on, I would love to hear what he has to say. I pretty much think we've beaten this horse down just as bad as we can get it for this episode.
Yeah. And as Snoop Dogg would always say, for shizzle, my nizzle. Because at this point, he's probably used marijuana more times in one day than I probably have in my whole life. And I guess for me the thing is I'm going to get passionate about this. This is a hot topic for me. This is something that I fought with and been for. And it's not just because I want to smoke pot, or just because I think other people should be able to smoke it, or because I see it less harmful than alcohol. It's because of the fact that there was a false scientific rumors going around. And what does our show do? We're skeptics. We want to debunk that. And so when I see unskeptical analysis, I have a hard time with it. And there's been false information going around about marijuana since, the early 30s. And it needs to stop. And people's laws are based on that. And what it's doing is it's affecting minorities. It's affecting the low income. It's affecting the youth. And yet we're going to sit here and we're going to worry about whether it's a gateway drug. Well, guess what? I smoked cigarettes well before I smoked pot. Oh, guess what? I drank alcohol well before I smoked pot. Guess what? It was pretty readily available where I lived, but I chose not to because I didn't like it. But guess what? There is cigarettes that you can get and alcohol you can get, and both will kill you. Whereas marijuana has never had, ever, an instance where it's killed somebody.
In your system. Yeah, no. Like if someone could have had an accident or wiped out or crashed or something, but that's just going to be from impairment.
No,
Me personally, I have used marijuana. It wasn't a gateway for me. If anything, I just couldn't smoke it. It hurt my lungs too much. I've always had weak lungs or whatever. So where's my gateway? No, weed just wasn't workable for me. So drinking is good enough. Good to go.
So thank you guys. Thank everybody who's been listening. Stick around because when we come back from this commercial break, we're going to talk about GMOs and if I used to believe that they were harmful. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey, my name is Wesley. I'm from the Atheist Nomads podcast. Kick back a while and listen to my friends on the Cellar Door Skeptics.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you everybody for joining us again for episode 6. This is our science segment. Yes, it might not be as good as our weed segment. Yes, I went on a little bit of a rant. But tonight we get to talk about GMOs, which I'm actually kind of excited about because I'll be honest with you, everybody. I was not skeptical of GMOs. I genuinely believe they were harmful for quite a long time. And I'll give credit where credit is due. I was listening to a podcast called Ask an Atheist, and they're based out of Seattle, Washington, I believe, or Bremerton, Washington, or something like that. But anyway, they had a podcast, and they had a guy that came on that had a PhD in some sort of genetics, and he came and explained why GMOs are not any different than genetically modified stuff through crossbreeding. And all of a sudden I go, oh, holy shit. So I started to do research, and I sent a question in. And then I told them I'm genuinely questioning my beliefs. Like, I felt like a Christian for a second. I was genuinely questioning whether I really believed that GMOs were bad.
You had a leaving the fold moment with fruit.
I did. And I'll tell you what, I worked at a farmer's market for a long time. I mean, I spent a long time.
I remember you telling me that you could tell me the best way to find the perfect cantaloupe, man. You're
and
like,
a watermelon.
Got the best melons in town. I remember you saying
I could tell you that, yes. I could tell the audience right now. And Johnny did this to me one time. One time Johnny made me tell the whole live audience how to pick a watermelon. For 20 minutes, he went off on this. I could tell you how to pick a watermelon out. If you want, I can clip that part of the episode and you can listen to me rant about watermelons. I didn't think it was interesting, but that's because I already know how to do it. So,
well, but yeah, you're the expert on that, right? So no, we'll pass on that. Well, this was something that I've talked about in the past with Heretical Minds, and it's something that I went into a little bit deeper for this segment than I did on Heretical Minds, because I've learned a few things since then, and a few things that I was really surprised on, and then a few things that made me go, oh yeah, well, maybe GMOs aren't the best thing in the world. The first thing I want to talk about is the World Health Organization, because, I mean, we all know the World Health Organization is like the biggest thing that tries to educate people on these types of things. And so they have an awesome page that's going to be in the links, and it's for frequently asked questions on genetically modified foods.
I'm going to stop you, though. I'm going to stop you before you even start. So you do know recently they categorized all processed meat, bacon.
Yeah, I know.
As carcinogens, as bad as cigarettes. But they just said probably. They didn't actually say, hey, this is how many times more it caused cancer. And they're not able to actually isolate that. You do know that it causes me to be very skeptical of anything they say.
Well, yeah, and everything should be taken with a grain of salt. What they've got for this new meat thing, they do have some grounds behind it, and there's some science in there, and it needs to be gone through. That could be something that we could do, is we could talk about ass cancer and bacon, and that's a pretty good segment name.
Ass cancer and bacon. It's a new clip for the episode.
I'm on a roll today for segment names. We got this month on pot, ass cancer and bacon. But
works for me.
Well, the World Health Organization does have some questions to answer about the carcinogens in processed foods, and they probably do have some decent data. So we probably need to dig into that and find that. But I'm just going to go on what they have. And like I said, with a grain of salt, the World Health Organization is not the end all be all. So a lot of the stuff in here, this is generalized terminology just to help explain what GMOs are and why they're produced and things of that nature. Because we need to know really where we're at as far as what is a genetically modified organism. It's defined as an organism in which genetic material has been altered in a way that does not occur naturally. That's the reason why people are weirded out, is because this isn't something that you can get when you just mix an apple tree with a different kind of apple tree. This is mixing an apple genetic line or an apple gene with a bacterium to help it more resistant to it'll produce something that actually drives bugs away. That's the kind of thing that GMO stuff is, and that's what scares people. And this is why are they produced? Obviously, it's a lower price because there's in greater benefit in terms of durability and nutritional value. One of the objectives for developing plants based on GM organisms is to improve crop protection, and then also they're mainly aimed at increasing the level of crop protection through the introduction of resistance against plant diseases caused by insects, viruses, and damage from herbicides. So what we want is resistance. We want resistance to make these things last longer, because I don't know if you've ever tried to do any kind of farming or grow anything. Bugs destroy everything. Disease destroys everything. You're going to have a much higher rate of crop that just go bad when you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, what we have is we have these herbicides and these crazy Roundup things that kill everything. Well, they also kill some of the plants, and so they need to make these things more resistant to what they use to keep the bugs and diseases away. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but I just want to get through like the basics of what this stuff is. And then the next thing on the World Health Organization list is the safety of foods assessed differently for GM foods versus conventional foods. And most national authorities consider the specific assessments necessary for GM foods. Really, the entire planet doesn't trust it. And so there are specific.
So they have
systems that
higher.
have been set up.
They have higher standards, is what you're telling me.
Oh yeah, they are much more stringently monitored, and it's called the World Health Organization recommends the use of Codex Alimentarius guidelines, and you can look that up. It's this really, really specific list of things that they have to do.
Kind of sounds like the puzzle box from Hellraiser.
Oh yeah, of course it does. I mean, scientists do one of two things well. They name something really, really well that's really, really cool, or they name it horrible. That sounds like someone who had some of that naming style, at least for a nerd like me, anyways. But so it says that the food World Health Department of Food Safety and I'm gonna assume this word is zoonosis, and that's probably dealing with animals and genetic. Aims at assisting national authorities in the identification of foods that should be subject to risk assessment. So the WHO is helping national countries to try to find what's a little bit more dangerous. And then how is its safety assessment for food conducted? It's essentially the WHO and the people who are doing the assessing, they'd look for direct health effects as toxicity, potential to provoke allergic reaction, which is allergenicity, specific components to have nutritional or toxic properties, and the stability of the inserted gene in the ecosystem that is going to be put in, and in the specific organism, and then nutritional effects associated with genetic modification, and then finally, obviously, any unintended effects. And so these are the things that they're looking for, and we've essentially this is what it is. This is why they do it, and these are the things they're looking for. Now, do you know what allergenicity is? Have you ever heard of that? Because that's where we mentioned it in the pot thing. I talked about the kid dying. So allergenicity is essentially if you eat something like a peanut, in your peanut
dead.
allergy, you're gonna puff up like a balloon and pop and die. Well, they want to make sure that we don't have some kind of crazy genetic allergenicity issue where if you eat this thing that's got this new gene in it to make it stronger, better, faster, bionic corn or whatever, that it's not going to cause an allergic reaction and kill you. Well, the one thing that we're going to actually put this in there. There is a myth going around about a kid who ate a tomato that had a fish gene put in it to help it live longer, and he had an allergy to fish and he died. Well, Snopes found nothing. I couldn't find anything, and I tried finding some stuff in PolitiFact, there's no the person at Snopes found the kid that's in the picture of the article that's going around the internet is from someone else on I think it was on Instagram. They said that it's in the link in the article, but it's obviously it's just one of those things that it's a myth or a lie that's going around. But and from what I've been able to find, I have never. It says right here, as a matter of principle, transfer of genes from commonly allergenic organisms to non-allergenic organisms is discouraged. So right off the bat, like no peanut genes are going into anything like that. It says protocols for testing GM foods have been evaluated by the Food and Agriculture Organization, and so no allergic effects have been found relative to GM foods currently on the market. So essentially, they've been checked. Like you're not gonna drink your new favorite whiskey that's been made from rye that's got some kind of crazy thing in it.
Man, that would be kind of awesome, though. I might actually enjoy that. Hey, it gave me radioactive superpowers. I'd be like Spider-Man, drunk Spider-Man. I'll be drunk Spider-Man. That's my new nickname. You can call me Chris the Drunk Spider-Man.
Because you're slinging sticky stuff in the face.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so
you had to take that to just a negative,
well, I had
perverted
to. I mean,
level.
It's the Spider-Man,
you just
dude.
you had to drop the whole thing.
Yeah,
you just ruined the whole science segment, Chris, by bringing it down with your Spider-Man jizz.
Well, I mean, Spider-Man. That's the when I'm not in the science forums, I'm in the gutter, I guess is the best way to say it.
Is that where it is? Are you in the interwebs? Are you in the dark web where they have Spider-Man porn?
I might be. The next thing that's a big thing, back to a serious topic here, is outcrossing, and this is what our friend over at Paleo Radio, Joe Elder, talked about. With they talked about some GMO and some Monsanto and suing and all kinds of stuff like that. Outcrossing is migration of genes from GM plants into conventional crops, related species in the wild, as well as mixing of crops derived with conventional seeds. So essentially, it's making this super seed, this super plant or whatever. Is it going to dig in and kick the shit out of any other existing crop? Is it going to get into the animals that eat it and change them? Is it going to invade the system? That is the big thing that we're worried about as far as creating these really powerful organisms, so to speak. And cases have been reported where GM crops approved for animal feed or industrial use were detected in low levels in the products intended for human consumption. Several countries have adopted strategies to reduce mixing. So essentially, it'd be feed corn that's been modified to be really good for cattle, for growth, for whatever. And it got mixed into some of the corn that humans are consuming. But we're going to talk about some of the myths in a few minutes, and this is one of the things that the number is so low that we'll never even notice, provided they continue to work on keeping these strategies to keep the stuff from mixed. And then how is it assessed? Like, what is the WHO doing? And the assessments covered by both GMO concern the potential receiving environment. So essentially, it's the new genetic information. Will it upset the delicate nature of the ecosystem? I that's one of the big things for me. It's like when we talk about that the outcrossing. It's just making sure that whatever we put in there doesn't destroy it. I would prefer to have more expensive fruit and more expensive vegetables and things if I know that using the genetically modified one that's cheaper will destroy the environment. I'm taking like
I think
Bill
anybody
Nye.
would do that.
Yeah, but well, I mean, depends. Are you willing to shop at Whole Foods versus Walmart?
No, because I'm not PC, bro.
Oh God!
Reflection back to episode 4.
Yes, there we go. We are now officially tagging ourselves in the middle of our episode. Well, I mean, what would you do that? Like,
when I go to Whole Foods, dude, I used to shop at like something very similar to a Whole Foods.
Okay, so you would pay a premium for goods.
Yes, I do. I used to pay premium for foods. I don't quite as okay. I still do. How about this? If I have a way to buy a fresh vegetable, even in the middle of winter, I buy a fresh vegetable for 3 times the cost of a frozen or canned. Yeah. I don't eat canned food ever. Like, I just don't do it. I'll eat canned soup. I take that back. I eat canned soup. I'll be Donald Trump. I eat canned soup. I just nothing else, guys. And I'll flip my hair. But no, I don't. I eat fresh food. We do. Our household eats fresh food. My food bill is outrageous. If I told you how much my food bill is, we could place a wager right now. We could place a wager who's going to buy the next bottle of Jaeger for the show, because I can guarantee you.
Product placement.
I can guarantee you, my food bill,
I know it's higher than mine.
is not only higher than yours, not because I have more people, but my ratio is probably a good 30% above yours. And I would wager a bottle of Jaeger on that because of the fact that I have bought, and I still do buy some types of organic food. Now, I eat GMOs. I don't go out of my way to avoid GMOs anymore. I don't care. I eat GMOs. But I do eat more organic food. I do buy higher end, like I don't buy beef very often. I will eat steak, but I don't buy ground beef. And if I do, I'm buying the very lean stuff. I'm usually buying the stuff that says that have extra hormones in it. I'm buying a lot of different things. And we eat a lot of vegetables in this house. We eat a lot of salsa too. I love chips and salsa.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing. I'm a big salsa person. But long story short, we spend more money on food, and I go out of my way to buy things that reduce the environmental footprint I leave. Yeah. I do that. I have too many kids, so I have to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the big thing for me is we will talk. That's another one of the other things that we'll talk about in a couple minutes. Because I have a really great article from the Huffington Post on that. Is we'll talk about is there a way that you can buy non-GMO already? Because people want that label. Well, there's a way you can do it, and it's really simple. So stick around for a few more minutes, and we'll tell you exactly how to do that. But when you're buying foods, would people themselves, would just the average people, would they pay a little bit more to reduce that? The worrisome idea that you're buying GMO foods. I don't know.
They do. It's evident because you wouldn't have Whole Foods in an organic.
Yeah.
The organic food industry.
But it's so hard.
It's just as bad.
I mean, this could break into a politics argument for the minimum wage and the spendable income that people have. But we'll move on and get into how are GM foods regulated nationally, and how are they regulated internationally?
How about this? I don't even care about that. I'm more interested into the food fight, into more of the actual scientific consensus. Like, I want to understand why people were against it. Like, I know why I was against it, but I don't care how they're regulated.
We'll skip it. If you guys want to see the World Health Organization, the way that they do the regulations, they give some nice little insights, and then they also say what they're going to be doing to help evaluate and improve the evaluation. But let's get into the Huffington Post food fight with Gwyneth Paltrow. And it's really weird that she's in the middle of this. The article comes out, and it's just a Hollywood star and lifestyle guru, Gwyneth Paltrow, is set to appear alongside Senator John Tester, Democrat from Montana, Wednesday of whenever this article was written. It says, I'm looking for the date at the top here. It looks like August 5th, 2015. And yes, the Hollywood stars like to get into the big arguments, the big politics and stuff.
Yeah, they got money to pay for the food, right?
Yeah. Well, what she did was she said I think she's one of the ones who said I'm going to live on minimum wage, and then she made it through like 2 days and stopped because she couldn't freaking do it. But we'll leave that to another day of celebrity bashing. Essentially, it's they're discussing the need for GMO labeling. The scientific community agrees, straight up, and I've got links all over the place for this. The link list for this segment is going to be massive. So, scientific consensus in a Pew poll of all things, it says the general public is at 37%, and they believe that GMOs are safe to eat. And scientists are at 88 or 87%. And this is the American Association for the Advancement of Science. They found 88% of the scientists in GMOs were generally safe. To put that in perspective, only 87% of scientists in the poll agreed that human activity is causing climate change. So more scientists, more consensus says that GMOs are safe than the already intensely huge percentage of scientists that agree that.
Well, if you're a creationist, you believe those 87% are lying. So maybe creationists are against GMOs too. I mean, it's not created by God, right? So.
Yeah, that would be my assumption. They would probably be against any kind of change like that. Well, why the consensus? Why the consensus, though? It says the American Medical Association states there's no scientific justification for special labeling on bioengineered food. What they specifically said was voluntary labeling is without value unless it is accompanied by focused consumer education. So if the people don't know what bioengineering foods is, if they don't know what genetically modified organisms are, they just had this big scary red tag, this could actually affect them in a negative way, and they're not going to learn anything. They're just going to avoid that label. Like, have you heard anybody that's gluten-free? You know anybody that's gluten-free?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, well, this if you don't have celiac disease, it has absolutely no benefit for you to be eating gluten-free. It has nothing to do with health, has nothing to do with diet. It's if you have celiac disease, that specific gluten will affect your system. Otherwise, you're just buying into a fad. This is something that I've actually had some arguments with people about around the internet and Facebook and my deep web stuff when I'm acting all creepy.
You do act creepy quite a bit. And you let's go back to that 87% versus 88%. And there's an argument that say you just can't buy into the consensus.
No,
you can't. And there's an argument that says, well, just because the majority believe it doesn't mean you should. But how about this? The difference is this argument's based on fact. Like, we can actually research it. And you pointed out no scientific justification for labeling of these foods is needed because there's no issues with the food or not enough that makes it worth it. And I'll tell you what, when I was in college recently, and I could tell you, I had an argument with somebody. I argued with somebody on like a public forum. That's how I got my weekly points, was to be on a public forum. And normally they were nice forums. This guy and I went back and forth, and I ended up writing a paper on it, and then I do research, and then I kind of like had to like retract. I got an A on the paper, but I had to retract my paper because basically it was based on no facts. There's only like one scientific study, and it's not even a real scientific study. It's not publicized anywhere but France. There's one study that says anything negative about GMOs. Everything else is either middle of the road or approval of it. Says, hey, there's no issues.
Well, Europe has changed recently. Europe basically banned a whole bunch of stuff. And there's a bunch.
But they're not
of people.
doing it on science, though.
Yeah, I know. That's the
they're
thing.
doing it on public craze, like you said.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yes, that's the thing, is that they're doing it on the same kind of thing that scares people away from GMOs and stores. And the fact is that, like we talked about, and you mentioned it earlier, there's a lot of people that are already kind of eating this stuff. You said that you don't specifically run away from it or anything.
Nope, not GMOs anymore. We do eat more. I'll be honest. I sometimes buy organic food, and I don't like processed food as much.
That's a cool tie-in, because that organic label, that's a really cool thing that I'll mention in a few minutes here. What we have here, though, is for all of that stuff that says that that label is bad, the World Health Organization, obviously, like we talked about earlier, they support no need for labeling, but also the U.S. National Academy of Scientists, all independent, non-corporate organizations support this. So the independence is really important. Then this is the thing here. Human beings have been genetically modifying food for millennia. In 2013 editorial against GMO labeling, the Scientific American magazine compares the ancient agricultural methods like breeding and genetic splicing that creates disease-resistant crops. So genetic splicing is splitting things up, and it's doing things like grafting, where you put one branch of a plant on the trunk of another plant, and it strengthens it and creates more powerful plants that are disease-resistant, and all kinds of really cool stuff. We've been doing this for a long, long time, breeding and animal husbandry, as well as mixing and pollinating and cross-pollinating. Think about most of the flowers that are super powerful that you can buy in really weird times of the year.
Like marijuana?
Yes, marijuana. It's crispy, it's crystally, and it's red and hairy. Yeah, so this is what the Scientific American said. It said, we have been tinkering with our food's DNA since the dawn of agriculture. By selectively breeding plants and animals with the most desirable traits, our predecessors transformed organisms' genomes, turning into scraggly grass into plumply kerneled corn. For example, for the past 20 years, Americans have been eating plants which scientists have used modern tools to insert a gene here or tweak a gene there, helping to create tolerate drought and resist herbicides. Around 70% of processed foods in the United States contain genetic modified ingredients. So that means that even if you are against it, there's a good chance you're eating it. Genetic modification of foods hold a great deal of promise for poor communities. And this is one of the big things for me. This is one of the reasons why I really support it. There's a thing called golden rice. And it's a specific rice that's very, very resilient, and it's enriched with vitamin A. In certain areas in Africa, children are going blind from the lack of essential nutrients like vitamin A. There's this huge thing that was out with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, and the U.S. Patent and the Trademark Office awarded the creators of the golden rice a Patents for Humanity Award, which essentially is a great thing that should save millions of lives. And what happened? Well, William Selaton of Slate notes that in his year-long investigation of safety of GMOs, what happened? Of course, they didn't get anything. And so 2 years ago, anti-GMO activists destroyed a field trial of the rice in the Philippines. And last year, they filed a petition to block all field tests, including field studies. So essentially, Greenpeace boasted for more than 10 years of research, golden rice is nowhere near its promise of vitamin A deficiency. And you know what happened to that? Over 1 million kids are dead now. So we had this scare tactics, this terrifying thing that some people are doing, like the whole switch in Europe. That it's a fear campaign that is not based in really good science, and it's scary. Consumers already have a label for non-GMO foods. It's organic. If you buy something that says organic on it, they have to comply with non-GMO rules. So anyone who is concerned about avoiding them need only to steer himself towards the organic sections of your supermarket, and you have your label. It's already there. So if you're searching for non-GMO, just look for the organic label at your store. The last thing I wanted to talk, or the last two things. The first one is the majority of American food supply in 2011. It's from the International Service for the Acquisition of Agro-Biotech Applications. They said 95% of sugar beets, 94% of soybean, 90% of cotton, and 88% of feed corn were all GMO. If you can find something that those things are not in, you're a detective. And then I'm reading right now. We'll be doing a review of this book. It's Bill Nye's book, Undeniable. And in it, he has a great quote. I love it. The possibility of genetic modification reminds me of the need for a scientifically literate electorate. Please stay tuned and vote. So essentially, that's what it is.
I'm going to throw something in there as we walk out of this segment.
Bust it.
I'm going to fuck your whole world up.
Go for it.
Guess who is anti-GMO?
I know he is.
Aggressively anti-GMO. Bill Nye. It's ironic you use a quote from Bill Nye's book, even though he's anti this whole segment.
Well, have you heard about his new change?
He's changed. He hasn't come as far left as he should.
He's rewriting his GMO section that I actually pulled this part out of. He's rewriting that section for the second edition of his book, where he went through the GMOs and he talked with them and they explained what they do. And he is now more open to what they do and wants to obviously monitor it. But he is not anti-GMO anymore.
He's just semi-pro.
Yeah,
that's all. He's like, I can approve of, I don't know, abortions for women that are gonna die, but not anybody else. That's what that says to me.
It's where I say for a lot of my stuff that I go the middle ground, especially with this kind of thing here. You need to regulate it. You need to make sure there isn't some really dangerous thing that's happening. But on average, GMOs are for the better. They're better for just about everything.
We don't need labeling. There's no need for labeling. Labeling is an unneeded, excessive amount of...
Yeah, the organic label that we already have is plenty sufficient. And so I'm really curious. I'm going to do the first review of Bill Nye's book, and when the second edition comes out, when he's reviewed and changed his perspectives, maybe I'll do an update and we can talk about where he is then. But my guess is he'd be in the middle where I am. I'm worried about cross-pollination and these genetically modified organisms affecting the ecosystems that they're in. If they don't do that and they don't take over stuff and they basically do what they're supposed to do and they're safe, I don't see any reason why there's any issue with using them.
But even if they do, there's ways we can find around it.
Oh yeah.
And as everyone's listening to this segment, the links will be in the description. You can find everything that you want to. And out about GMOs and more.
Yeah, there's some links we didn't even touch.
Yeah, we didn't even touch half this because science. At some point, science, you gotta go, holy shit, there's more than we need. Thank you. We've had enough GMOs for today. I've eaten enough GMOs while we've been talking about this segment to choke a horse.
Well, it's why we got a multiple month segment on marijuana, because you came together with a research page the size of what my science pages are like here. So we're going to be doing multiple segments on the marijuana for this month in pot.
So make sure you guys stick tuned. In just a few seconds, we'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Stay tuned for the revolution.
Hey, what's up? I'm Steve Hayes.
And I'm Dave Curry.
And we're from Profitcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics
on the Fox News Network.
They're not affiliated with Fox.
Everyone's a Fox affiliate.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around with us. We've had such a great show so far. We've talked about GMOs and how they affect us, and we've also talked about the legalization of marijuana in Michigan and some of my objections to some of the local prosecutors that just happen to be roaming our area. So what I want to do, though, is bring you a special engagement. Some friends of mine that happened to join my old show, Atheist Analysis, way back in the day, and they're street epistemologists. So if you haven't heard that term, you must be probably living under a rock. But if you haven't heard the term, we're actually going to talk about that tonight, and we're going to go ahead and analyze one of their shorter videos to kind of give you guys an overview of what the process can be and maybe inspire some of you guys or girls to go out there and do this. So we have a couple that's been married, and we'll call them Socrates Jones, and they have done this together for a couple of years now. So let me bring on Lindsay and Keith. How are you all tonight?
Hi, Christopher. We're doing great. Thanks for having us on.
Christopher, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and it was such a pleasure last time I had you guys. I think I've had you on, I don't know, once or twice now.
Yeah, it was yeah.
It was once, and then we had a failure, so we had to redo that. Remember? Yeah. That's what it was.
That was a long night.
That was a very long night. Those are long shows. We don't do as long as shows anymore. So our shows are kept to a tight 2 hours, typically. So... But tonight, I wanted to have you guys on my new show because I enjoy the work that you guys do, and it's all volunteer work. You guys don't get paid. It's not like you guys are making $1 million doing this. But this is something that anybody can do, and people can do it in a small portion or a large portion. So if they want to just spend an hour a day, an hour a week, they can. Or if they want to go out every weekend or every day, they're more than welcome to do that. So I thought you guys would be great to come on and tell everybody a little bit about street epistemology, tell everybody about a little bit how you got into it and where you're at now.
Hey, well, Christopher, street epistemology is, well, let's go back a little bit. So Lindsay and I have been married for over 13 years. What, is it 13 years?
Yeah.
And religion has not been a conversation we have had often, but when we do have it, it was never confrontational, but it was almost apathetic. And we got to the point where we couldn't be apathetic anymore because we realized that religion is a driving factor when it comes to decisions that some people make. And when it affects other people in society, there's a certain point where some of us just have to find out if that's, what's the reason why, and is it a good reason? And we're not against it. We just want to know what the best way is.
Yeah, you guys want to know the most honest answer to the question, correct?
Absolutely. And typically it ends in an argument. When you have a non-theist and a theist, you end up in an argument. So we were always looking for a way. So back in about February of last year, Lindsay and I were having a discussion about a book that she was reading called A Manual for Creating Atheists. And the title alone leads you to believe that this book was based on some sort of provocation, but it isn't. And ultimately, the book is a dialectical tool based on having non-confrontational conversations with believers to explore how they justify their beliefs. And that, at the point when I read that book, I thought to myself, this is the way, using the Socratic method of just asking questions, not trying to be confrontational, but asking questions. Why does someone believe what they believe? Do they have the answers that I'm looking for? How do they justify it? Or are they believing with no evidence because that's where they were born, that's what they were taught, or are they just pretending?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ironically enough, I heard it through the same person from the same book, and probably, I don't know if it was around the same time or not. I can't remember when I got into Peter and his book, and I actually had him on Atheist Analysis, and we kind of went over some of that. But his book's been out for 2 or 3 years now, and it was inspirational. And like you said, the title of the book is not something that people will go, I want to pick that up and read it. They're going to go, that's shocking. And he actually admits there's a reason behind why he did that. And whether you agree with it or not, it got you to read the book. And so for me, that was same with you guys. That was inspirational. Kind of said, hey, maybe I should start talking more. Maybe I should be doing different things, because just sitting at home listening to podcasts or typing on Facebook and yelling at people on Facebook really isn't doing any good. I could probably find a more beneficial way to do that.
Yeah, and we found that too. So in an excuse to buy a GoPro, which every man needs, right? I mean, I talked to Lindsay and I said, hey, let's buy a GoPro and let's go out and do some interviews. You know, Anthony Magnabosco, and he's at Magnabosco, 210 on YouTube.
And Twitter.
Great. He basically got us going with it. When you watch his videos, and we started out watching his videos, it's amazing what he can do in 5 minutes by just asking questions, getting people to think about deeply held beliefs of anything. And it doesn't have to be about religion. Sometimes it isn't. Most times it is, because that's the deepest belief most people have. But ultimately, it comes down to just great dialogue, honest, open, frank, friendly dialogue with people. And so we just went out and did that. And so we had an opportunity to go out and visit Daniel Dennett and Richard Dawkins when they went to Boston to do I guess it was a lecture. And it was awesome. It was kind of a surprise for me that my wife, Lindsay, bought for us tickets to go see them. So we went up to Boston, took the kids, and went up there, and it was a great opportunity for us to do some street epistemology in a place that we're not familiar with, and just asking people in a random park, hey, do you have 5 minutes to talk about your God beliefs? And that's kind of where we went with it. Yeah.
So before we get too far, because we should talk a little bit about some of the methods for anybody that doesn't know. We got to touch on those a little bit. But when you just said that, and I'm going to clip this just so you know, I'm clipping this little part where Keith just says, hey, I went up and asked people if they wanted to talk about their God belief. You sounded like a Jehovah's Witness right there. You had enough practice. It's almost like you were into that Jehovah Witness thing. So when you guys go out and do this, do you ever get any pushback from people? Do you ever get anybody that says, hey, by the way, you just sound like the religious? Have you ever had to address that question?
Absolutely. And what it comes down to is you don't want to look like a religious
proselytizer. We're not proselytizing. We're not telling people what to think.
Yeah.
We're simply asking questions. And so what happens with a proselytizer, or Jehovah's Witness typically, is that, they start by asking you a question, but then they want to tell you what to believe after that, or that they have the answer to the question that they've asked you. And that's what's different with street epistemology, is that we're not trying to answer any questions for people. What we want to do is explore with the person we're speaking to how they justify their beliefs, and maybe find out if those justifications are reasonable or not. And so there's lots of different ways that you can do that throughout a conversation, different techniques, different roads of questioning or lines of questioning that you can use. And we're going to do a video breakdown here where we'll listen to a video that we recorded in Boston Commons, as Keith mentioned. And you'll be able to, we'll talk about a couple different lines of questioning that I approached with that person in that interview.
And you know the best part about the street epistemology, I mean, you know, with the Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff like that, and other people, I guess we'll say, in religion, a lot of their stuff scripted out. A lot of it's very scripted. The only time you run into people that are not scripted, honestly, is when you get to the people that believe in the whole faith healing thing, and they carry that into how they proselytize to other people. My uncle is like that, for instance, and he does the same thing. He believes in the Holy Spirit basically coming in and filling people's bodies and blah, blah, blah. But he's harder to nail down. When people approach me, it's pretty easy because I've done it long enough, and I've done the opposite side of it long enough that I know both arguments. And so I know where they're going to go with it. And the best part about the street epistemology that I found is the fact that, like you said, it asks questions. You're not attacking. In the end, you can walk away and say, hey, thank you for your opinion. I'm just doing investigative journalism. And to a point you are. Because, and I'll tell everybody, if for some reason they were able to convince me, they were able to say, hey, Chris, this is better, and they could prove me wrong, it would give me more ammo to go, okay, hey, I need to keep looking at what I believe. I no longer want to be secure in it. And that's the key difference. And for anybody listening to this, the key difference is the fact that most atheists that will approach you using this type of a method are not out to do it because they want to change your mind. They're out to do it because they're gathering information, because you never know, they could be wrong.
Yeah, and that's the key thing. And there's two things that I always walk into a conversation with. One is I want to be completely honest. And when someone asks me a question, I'm not going to tell them something that I hope is true. I'm going to tell them what I think is true and what I know to be true through evidence. And also, if they have information that turns out to be true, I want to know it. And ultimately, if they can change my mind on something, I want to know it. And that is true of any religion. Any person I talk to of any type of religion, if they have the truth, I want to know it, because I want to know, ultimately, I want to know the truth.
So cool. So before because like you said earlier, Lindsay, we're going to break a video down, and we're going to break it. It's a 9-minute video. So what we're going to do is we'll do a couple of segments. We'll probably take a quick commercial break between the two, and our commercial breaks. So everybody listening who used to listen to Atheist Analysis, I promise you, they're not 3 minutes long. They're only 30 seconds now. So we no longer do 3-minute commercial breaks. We do 30-second ones. But before we get into the video, can we talk a little bit about the methods? Because there's some newer methods out there, and since I've had you on, there's been some new things such as Periscope that have come out, and it would be interesting to hear you guys utilize, or how you guys utilize some of these different techniques that probably are a little newer to me and something I may not have used in the past.
Right. And so if you just read A Manual for Creating Atheists by Peter Boghossian, he just talks about having everyday conversations with people, either people in your family or friends that you have, or people in line at the grocery store, whenever the situation arises. And that's how most people will engage people with street epistemology. Could be at Thanksgiving dinner, which is coming up soon. And so it'll be great to have a more respectful, non-confrontational way to talk about beliefs. Another way is maybe Facebook chat or Google Hangouts. If you can find some folks who are believers who are professing certain supernatural beliefs, then you can engage them on that. Another tool that has recently popped up is something called Blab, and that's at blab.im. I think it's in beta right now, technically, but it's a video chat similar to Google Hangouts, where somebody can host a chat with up to 4 people being as participants in the video chat, and then additional folks in the written chat area or the audience area. And that's a great way if you can find a blab that's already been started by some believers who are talking about faith or preaching or whatever. You could possibly join in on that and start asking some questions, or you could even host your own street epistemology blab about discussing faith. We've already mentioned Anthony Magnabosco's YouTube channel. That's how we learned about street epistemology and doing the interviews. And we have a channel as well under Socrates Jones on YouTube for our videos. Now, you don't have to make a video. You don't have to go out and buy a GoPro, even though Keith would suggest it for everyone.
Yeah, we have 2 now.
But you don't have to do that. You can go out and interview folks with, not record it. Just the point is to go out and engage people and normalize the conversation about faith. And being able to talk about faith is the only way that we are going to get closer to truth in our society, being able to talk about it. We cannot let any subjects be privileged to where you cannot talk about them, you can't question them. And so this is our way of getting that out to more people through the YouTube videos. Another one you mentioned is Periscope, and that is a way for folks who do want to record or broadcast. It's actually live broadcast that you can broadcast your interviews with people and conversations with people about street epistemology if you want to. So look up Anthony Magnabosco on there as well. We haven't done any Periscopes yet through Socrates Jones, but we're looking into adding that next time we go out for interviews.
Anthony's actually done quite a few recently. Excellent interviews, one on top of another, that are live broadcasts, and then he records them and posts them. They're incredible. He's actually had conversations multiple times with people, and that's kind of what street epistemology gets at, is you don't want to just have a conversation with one person one time. You want to have multiple conversations with that person, so that when you leave the conversation, they can reflect on your conversation. You can reflect on it and come back and have a worthwhile second, third, and fourth or fifth discussion, so that you can get down to either basically get down to the truth. You know, what do you believe and why do you believe it, and how is that real?
And the Periscope, I volunteered for a local LGBT activist group that was kind of an interfaith group, and when I did that recently, we used kind of the same method. We used Periscope. We were out at the event actually using Periscope live and broadcasting live while we were protesting. So I'll be honest, I've never used it for a show, but you know, long ago when I worked for David Smalley, I had conversations. How do you record audio? How do you record video right there in front of people? How do you do that? Well, Periscope is a great way. Even if nobody follows you or watches it, you can still download it, take it, and use it later. So
yeah, it's great.
Absolutely. It's a great resource. And you can, if somebody like Anthony, can gather followers on Periscope, and then the followers will get a notification every time he goes live. And so you'll be able to watch in real time if you follow him there that way. It's really cool.
So cool. So we're going to jump into the video, but I always say, hey, so for anybody that doesn't know what this is, you guys are going to get a very raw taste. This is not going to be a pre-edited video. So basically, Lindsay did not go out there and do all this stuff and then edit it down so you only saw the good stuff. She took it in real time, if you want to call it that. And we're going to critique a little bit here in a few minutes. So tell everybody a really quick backstory. Let's shoot for a minute or two backstory for the video, and then what I'll do is I'll jump right in. We'll play I guess it's not a video anymore. It's an audio clip. But we'll play the first 3 minutes of the audio clip, and then what we'll do is talk about it from there.
Sure. If anybody wants to see the actual video of Megan, go to our YouTube channel and it's on there. But so like Keith mentioned earlier, we went to Boston to go see Dawkins and Dennett speak, and we thought this is a perfect opportunity to do street epistemology. So we went to Boston Commons and strapped on the GoPro and started asking folks if they were willing to talk about their God beliefs. So Megan was gracious enough to agree to speak, and she's a little bit of an unconventional believer in the sense that you'll find out that her beliefs are more deistic, and so that's one of the challenges that was in this conversation, was kind of nailing down what actually her belief was, and so that was something that I would try to improve upon in the future with somebody who believes similarly to Megan. But we can go through the first about 3.5 minutes where I introduce myself, explain the purpose of the video, try to find out what her belief is, how confident she is that it's true, and why she believes it.
Yes, and so thank you very much, and that's awesome. And like I said, for everybody that's listening, they have a lot more videos out there. We're just taking one sample, one that we haven't analyzed. I think last time we analyzed a video with a Muslim, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah,
last time we were together, we did that.
Yeah, that was a Christian who had become Muslim.
Yes,
and that was a great one.
Yes, and that's why I picked that one, I think, because you guys said, hey, this is really interesting, and we actually have a lot of people that used to work with me that were, Muslims that became Christians and then went back and then became atheists. You know, in the end, they become atheists. So I have a very good friend that kind of had that same similar thing. But everybody, hang on tight, because I'm going to go ahead and in just a second here, and I'm going to play a 3-minute clip for you guys. And when we come back, we're going to talk more with Lindsay and Keith and analyze what you guys have just heard. So make sure you stick around and listen to it. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hi, I'm Adam Collins, and I'm organizing the first ever Atheist of Facebook online convention.
First ever Atheist of Facebook online convention.
Atheist of Facebook online convention.
We're bringing this convention to you, to your home, for free.
Again, it's free.
We have a huge, diverse set of speakers from all over the world speaking about all kinds of different topics of interest in atheism.
Atheism in America and how we can work to achieve social normalization.
Childbearing, motivational stuff for getting them politically active, making them aware that they can affect change.
Talking to your family about religion.
Black atheists, the minority within the minority.
Sexism in the major world religions.
There's going to be a whole other kind of show coming y'all's way.
On November the 7th. November 7th.
And we'll be seeing you November 7th on our YouTube page. All the details are on the Facebook pages. See you there.
Now, back to the show.
I was wondering if you might have 5 minutes. I'm out here doing interviews with folks on how they come to their beliefs. Do you have 5 minutes to spare for a short interview?
Sure.
Okay, great. My name's Lindsay.
Hi, Megan.
Megan, nice to meet you. How do you spell that, Megan?
M-E-G-A-N.
Okay. Do you mind if I record? It's for, well, I'm doing the interviews for my philosophy group that we have online. It's just a hobby where we talk to folks about their beliefs. I also have a YouTube channel where I put the videos so that we can all look at them. But I would just put your first name and not anything else about, other identifying information. Okay, great. Okay, so I have a 5-minute timer just so I can set some sort of a limit because I know your time is valuable. But if you want to keep talking after that, that's great too. Okay, Megan, first of all, what are your God beliefs?
God beliefs?
Yes, like your beliefs, but do you believe in a God?
Yes, I believe in a God.
Okay, which one?
I'm not sure right now, actually.
Okay.
I'm in a kind of a time of trying to educate myself and figure that out.
Okay, so what is it that makes you partially sure but not completely sure?
I'm sure that there's a God.
Okay.
Positive.
If you could put
there's
that
something greater. I don't know. But I was raised Christian, Episcopalian, and I've just learned more about the other world religions as of late. And I'm decided.
Okay, and I know this is probably going to be a hard question, but if you could put your confidence that there is a God, you're not sure which one, some sort of higher power, on a scale from 0 being not at all confident to 100 being I'm totally, completely confident in the Episcopalian God, or the Christian God. We're at 0 to 100. Where do you think you'd be right now?
8.
8, like 0, 8? Okay, okay. So 8 out of 100.
Oh, no.
Or 80.
80.
80 out of 100.
0 to 10.
Okay.
I don't know why.
No, that's fine. I know. Sometimes I talk fast, so the question can be confusing. Okay. Excuse me. So you're 80 out of 100, 80% confident that there is a Christian God. Okay. And what gets you to that 80% level? You said you were raised Episcopalian. Is there anything else besides being raised in that faith that helps you get to that point?
It's going to sound general, but I just think that the world is far too miraculous.
Okay.
And our bodies, all of the animals, plants, just the diversity and the chances of each and every person's existence are close to 0.
Okay.
I just think that can only be explained by there being some sort of greater power, God,
that created everything.
Okay.
And what's that 20% that you're not sure of that you did between 80 and 100?
I have this personal belief that I don't know what you would label it as, the God that I believe in is the same God for every religion, and humans
Okay.
I don't know what the formal name for that is, if there's any, but that's why there's the 20%. Because the specific Christianity part of it sometimes.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's the fact that there are right. Okay, so it's the fact that there are different sects, different religions, and different sects of different religions that make you think that they don't necessarily have the right answer as far as which God is the right one, but it's more of you're thinking that there is just one God, one higher power, and everybody and people are just arguing over. Okay. And what? So you said the evidence that you use to be confident that there is some sort of a higher power that created everything in the world is looking around and seeing how miraculous was the word I believe that you used.
All right, so here we go. We're going to pause the audio right here because the whole point last time when we had Lindsay and Keith on, we paused every time. We had video cues that were like, hey, stop here. We're going to content. And it took so long to go through a video. I think we bored some people. So we thought we're going to play blocks. We'll play 3 blocks for everybody and then analyze for a couple of minutes some of the different techniques and things that were used. So as you guys just saw, that was the first 3 minutes and I think 43 seconds of the video where they talk with Megan. And what we've learned so far, some of the big things that we've learned so far is that she believes that everybody's God is the same. I think that was a big takeaway from it. And she kind of went in and described a little bit about why she believed. So I'm going to let you guys take it away because you guys did the notes, you guys did this, and I'm not here to talk about it. I'm here to analyze what you guys did. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that first 3.5 minutes.
Right. So that part was just where we're trying to get a baseline. We're just trying to understand her viewpoint and her belief. And so that's really the wonder step in the Socratic method is what is this thing that we're trying to understand and this hypothesis, if you will, that we're coming up with. And so Megan's hypothesis is that there is a God, a creator type of God. And the reason that she believes that is because the chances of life existing requires there to be something that created that life. So the next step here will be to use the Socratic method to come up with questions that explore whether that is a reasonable justification for believing in God at the confidence level that she has.
Yeah.
So,
and hold on real quick because I think we missed something. We did miss something at the beginning part of this. We missed talking. You have a form you guys actually fill out now, which is new. This is new to me. I didn't see this last time. But we forgot to talk about a confidence level. And people are going to get confused, I think, because when we talk about the confidence level, people are like, what is that? So a confidence level for anybody that has watched the old show and is listening to this now knows a little bit. But a confidence level is where we kind of analyze and predict how confident she is in her belief or her belief system. And it's one of those things when I talked to you guys last time, it was a very important thing to kind of establish, even if you don't tell them what that number is or that percentage, it's important to establish so you can be able to gauge yourself next time if you ever meet that person again.
Yes, and different people use different scales to determine that confidence level. Anthony Magnabosco was the one who started, as far as I know, using the percentage confidence scale because that seemed to be useful to him. It's a lot of trial and error here in figuring out what questions help to elicit the belief and the confidence level and the justification. So that's something that I also like to use because you want to kind of have a baseline. You want to be able to say, okay, at the beginning of our conversation, here is, how confident this person is. And I've tried different things. I've tried, low, medium, or high confidence. But I keep coming back to the percentage scale because even if somebody doesn't necessarily or has a hard time deciding what their percentage is, you can at least get a ballpark figure. If they're more than 50%, then they're fairly confident. And I found in my experience, most people go straight to 100, especially Christians. They go straight to 100 or even higher on how confident they are. And so that can really tell you a lot about what somebody thinks and where they're at with their beliefs. So, but if you're talking to somebody and they don't want to give a percentage, it's not a big deal. You can still ask them how they know and then explore whether that's a reliable way of knowing.
Yes. And I think the confidence thing is a big thing I learned from you and from Anthony before, is because I never used that. I had no way of gauging, I guess. I just had a conversation. I never thought about gauging it. But if you look at life sometimes in business terms, and unfortunately that's my job outside of this. I actually have a real job, ironically enough, where I do in business, where I do Pareto analysis and I do analyzation and I do risk assessments and stuff like that. And so this just makes everything feel more comfortable for me. Like, I just feel more comfortable. It's like, oh yeah, I can relate. Oh, yep, I relate it. And then the light bulb clicks. So,
and it really helps also at the end of a conversation, if you remember to do this, to ask again. Unlike this conversation, I did not remember to ask Megan at the end if she's still, or what her, confidence level. But that can also help you to evaluate how well your questioning process went. Like, were you able to help the person maybe to reach a more honest or reasonable confidence level than what they began at. So that's one reason why it really helps to establish that confidence level at the beginning.
Yeah. Any other real quick last thoughts before I play the next segmented clip? Because we don't want to spend too much time on the intro, because I think the meat of the discussion is coming up.
So the next segment here is really this using the Socratic questioning, and it's trying to use a couple different techniques to address the reason that she gave. Is it testable? Is it defeasible? And we could talk more about that after you listen.
All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to throw the next clip on. So make sure you guys listen. And after about 3.5 minutes, we'll be back around the 7-minute mark, and we'll discuss that.
That you use. If scientists were able to find more evidence and come up with a theory of how the world was created, the universe, the world was created, all of life evolved naturally, and that had more evidence than maybe you've seen so far, would that change your beliefs on there being some sort of a higher supernatural being that created everything?
No.
If there was a satisfying scientific explanation?
I don't see why science has to disprove the belief that there's something created.
Okay. Okay. Well, I understand where you're coming from. I think I'm not phrasing it the right way. I would say more of...
Well, I guess I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So if that scientific explanation that everything, like, for example, evolution, so that's a scientific explanation for how humans came to be. But the fact that there were living cells on Earth in the first place, and water and oxygen, and we were able to develop into that to me is like...
And I think that's what we don't have a totally satisfying natural explanation for. But so maybe instead of saying like scientific versus, religious, because I don't want to get into that sort of a debate, but more of a natural versus a supernatural. So by natural explanation means, we know that if we put fertilizer on the grass, it feeds the grass and it will grow better. Yeah. Or, I was just over at the Harvard Natural History Museum, and they had a case that showed all of the different pre-human primate skulls that have been found to show the evolution of humanity and higher primates. So if humanity was able to put together a better explanation of how life began on Earth using a natural explanation, would that at all decrease your confidence that there was some sort of a supernatural creator God? No. So there's really no way then to know whether there is a creator God or if it's a natural explanation.
I guess so.
Well, do you see where I'm kind of going as far as if we can't know that it was X, Y, or Z, because even if I came up with an explanation, then for X, you'll just say, well, Y started X, or Z started Y, or further back. Yeah. So I'm wondering, and because the reason the question's important to me, and I'm droning on and on about it, is because of what you mentioned before about how people fight over which religion is true.
Yeah.
So I'm out here interviewing folks and wondering if anybody can think of a way that we can determine which one is correct or not.
Sure.
Yeah.
such a big question. I think it would have to be everyone accepting everyone's particular view. I think, if your individual decision is to not believe or to follow Muslim traditions or Christian or Buddhist, we all just need to say, okay, like whatever, which will never happen.
Right. Well, because they can't all be true at the same time, right? Like,
that's like
that Jesus is the savior, or that Muhammad, rode to heaven on a winged horse. Yeah.
But I don't believe in organized religion, really.
Okay.
Okay, Christopher. So in that section, we heard Megan answer some more questions that I asked that I was trying to get at the meat of her, why she believes. And so there were a couple different strategies that I used. At first, I tried to explore what we call the defeasibility test, or whether her justification for the belief is actually testable or falsifiable. So what she said was that the chances of life existing necessitated a creator God. And so what I was trying to get out there when I asked, are you open to changing your belief if scientists could explain the origin of life with a natural explanation? And so that's trying to say, okay, you gave us this reason as to why you believe. So if that reason was shown to be not true, or if it could be
not
tested,
that you have a reason.
Yeah, hypothetically. Exactly.
Hypothetically.
Thank you. Hypothetically. It doesn't have to be actually, possible or existing. If that was shown to be not true, would you be willing to change your beliefs? And that can be done with any reason that somebody gives for their belief. But then we started getting into, she gave the God of the Gaps argument, basically.
All the time, doesn't it? Like, I get that, all the time. It just seems it comes up more than you can imagine.
So, yeah, sure, evolution explains how humans evolved, but how did life, originate on Earth at the beginning?
It's actually the fallacious argument from ignorance. And we don't like to say that because you don't want to say that the person's ignorant. But ultimately, when they go, I can't explain this, therefore X, and X equals God, it doesn't explain anything.
Yeah.
It has no power to explain.
In our interviews, we don't actually bring up, that's the argument from ignorance, or that's the God of the Gaps. We don't do that. No. Instead, I tried to explain how that wouldn't help us really know the truth, because we could just continue back infinitely to this God of the Gaps argument. But when I noticed that wasn't really getting anywhere, I tried to switch to another strategy, which is the outsider test for faith. And that was developed in his the book by John W. Loftus called The Outsider Test for Faith. And that's how, basically in one sentence, if every person were to look at and evaluate all religions from an outsider perspective, how could we tell which one is true? And so, because most people don't usually evaluate all religions the same, they give their own privilege in any evaluation. So that's when I tried to ask her, how can we determine which of the God beliefs might be correct? And then she replied with a case of relativism, basically, that, we should all just accept everybody's beliefs. And then she said, that'll never happen. So at that point, I could have asked if this creator God is just whatever started the universe or started, the first life cell, is a belief in that God necessary or beneficial? What's the point of believing in a God that doesn't necessarily intervene or anything in life? So that was one thing I could have done differently in that part of the argument.
So, and I have a question too. You could also have brought up, how does her belief relate to others that contradict hers? I mean, I didn't hear that, and maybe we'll hear it in a few minutes. Maybe you'll get into that. But that's one thing for me, because I get a lot of that when I have these kind of conversations. Well, I believe this, and this, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, your belief contradicts their belief. So sure, I can accept their belief, but how do I know mine's true over theirs? And they contradict, so they can't. We both can't believe the same damn thing. We just can't.
Yeah, and so what Megan gets to at the end, and we've seen this a lot, is the ultimate. Every opinion is valued. Every belief should be valued. The problem with that is value and truth are quite different. And if you're looking for which belief structure is true, ultimately, if it affects the way that you live, the way that you vote, the way that you raise your children, who your children are prejudiced against, and the way that they live their lives, then it matters. It ultimately matters to society.
Mm-hmm.
So having two different ideals that are opposed, they can't be true at the same time, is a contradiction.
Yep.
And ultimately, when you tell somebody that, hopefully they take that away and they start to think about that.
And that's where I went in this last segment of the video with Megan, is asking her, well, can they all be true at the same time? and then moving on to the impact of her beliefs, as Keith was just talking about. So
cool.
If we want to listen to that, then we can talk about wrapping up.
We can. That's awesome, because then we could talk about the little sheet and we can go into your final thoughts. So what we're going to do is play the rest of the video for you guys, the audio of the video for you guys, and then we'll be right back with more from Lindsay and Keith.
So would you say that your belief in some sort of a creator God, does that affect how you live your life on a daily basis? Like, do you vote based on that, or do you...
I'm more grateful, and I guess I appreciate all that the world has offered me and everyone else, like nature and things like that. But as far as my worldviews, no.
Okay. Okay. So you don't agree with the folks who are fighting over whose beliefs are correct then, and all those different things. Okay. All right, Megan. Well, I really appreciate your time. I know I've gone over the 5 minutes, but I thank you for explaining your views there, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Have a great day.
Well, wasn't that a great audio for a video, guys? If you guys want to check out, or if you want to actually watch the video portion of this, you could do the same thing. I'll throw the link in the description. And what you guys can do is anybody listening to this can go on YouTube and find this video. Make sure you subscribe to their webpage, Socrates Jones, as well, because if you don't do that, then you won't get any further updates every time they put out a new video. But that'll give you the ability to actually kind of see some of her facial features, and you can actually see how she reacts. And towards the end, I'll be honest, if I know you didn't do a confidence level, and we can kind of get into a wrap up, but if you kind of look at her face, I mean, she smiles towards the very end, but you can definitely tell she was comfortable until the very end. She started to feel uncomfortable until she knew it was done. And you can actually see her getting uncomfortable. And I don't know if you guys get that a lot in the videos, if that's kind of a commonality thing, that all of a sudden, hey, you're doing this, and guess what? People start to feel uncomfortable because you're digging into something that they've never thought about before.
Yes, absolutely. And if you read the book, the term for that is aporia. And that is where somebody is considering that maybe they don't know what they thought they knew. And sometimes that can be really uncomfortable for folks. And so they might, exhibit body language or, try to withdraw from the conversation. And so that's just a time to pause and really sort of let them consider that moment. So in that last segment there, we tried to explore, if they can't all be true at the same time, how can we know which one is true? And that's where she said, well, I don't really believe in organized religion. So I tried to move on to the impact of her belief and whether her belief actually would influence how she votes and things like that. And when she said that it didn't really impact her life in that way, I figured, you know what, this is probably a good time to end the conversation because she seems like she's open to new information. Her beliefs aren't impacting her life or perhaps other people in any sort of, negative way. And we've already discussed the positive aspects of using evidence to know what's true. So I figured it was a time to end that conversation on a positive note. One of the things that's one of my main challenges, which you'll know from our interview right now, is that I like to talk a lot. And so I try to learn to just find the right time to end on a positive note and just let the person continue to think about the conversation, the questions that I asked throughout the interview. So,
you're just speaking to the choir. I'm the same way. I mean, we could sit here for 5 hours and record audio and video and then post it and edit it out. I mean, we could do that. I mean, if you go back and watch any atheist analysis video, they definitely, after October of last year, are not under an hour. I used to get 4 hours of sleep and then have to get up in the morning and be like, oh, I don't know what's going
my
on.
Goodness. Yeah, no. Maybe you shouldn't go on Blab then because you could be on Blab all night.
That's very true. So as we close up, with that video, and I like it. That's great. I think that's a technique that you are using that I think a lot of people should use. Because I'll be honest, I'm just debating on Facebook. It's really hard to not want the last word. It's a really hard thing, and there's a lot of people that have a hard time with it. Me, I'm one of them. I won't lie. If you've ever heard me and my co-host Chris talk, it's hard for me to let him have the last word sometimes. And it's not because I disagree with him as much as it's just that. So I like how you guys wrap it up and you're under, 10 to 15 minutes on almost every video. You guys don't do 50-minute videos. I don't even think Anthony does that long of videos either, to be honest with you.
We like to shoot for 5 minutes. I'll be honest, I've done some that are upwards of 30 minutes. And even by that time, I'm bored myself. So
I'll tell you what, Christopher, in the same day, she had a discussion with was it a pastor?
Oh, yeah. A Lutheran, I think he was Lutheran minister in Boston, and that one went a lot longer. That's also up on our channel if anybody wants to get preached at for 30 minutes.
And so the other thing that I don't know if this came from you or from Anthony, I can't remember, but there was something called a contact card or a parting thought, something where you were able to engage them to try and communicate with you back in some way, shape, or form. So do you guys actually give out cards? Is that something that you do? Do you give out bookmarks or maybe?
We have a card. We have a card that just has a couple quotes that, free thinker type quotes. I think there's one from, Socrates, Aristotle, maybe. I can't recall it this second. But just a couple of quotes about, how we know what's true and being open to new information. And then it has our Socrates Jones email account so that folks can contact us. At one point, we had put some information about various, like the Recovering from Religion website, which I love, and I would definitely refer people there. But I took that off of our business card that we hand out right now because I don't want to prejudice anybody. I don't want them to think that I'm trying to proselytize to them, that they need to leave their religion. That's not the point at all. The Recovering from Religion website is for people who are interested in doing that. So I took that off of there. That was a lesson learned. And so we do give out the contact card with just our email address if anybody wants to get in contact. I have had one person email me, a Jehovah's Witness who wanted to give me some pamphlets. And that led to a follow-up conversation, which was great. And then also after an intervention or an interview, we try to fill out a sheet that we've created that is a reflection sheet. And so that is where I can put some timestamps and a short transcript of the interview, some basic information about who I met with and what their confidence was, what their belief was, so that I can easily refer back to that. Because having done this for over 6 months now, sort of the faces and names and the beliefs kind of all blend together. And sometimes I think, I want to go back and listen to what I had asked that particular person about their belief. And so the reflection sheet really helps me to not only be able to refer back when I want to, but also to analyze my performance and to say, well, with Megan, I forgot to ask her what her confidence was at the end, so that I could see if she had changed her confidence level at all based on the conversation we had. And that's something that would really helpful for gauging whether you were able to come up with the right questions to ask, talk to somebody.
Yep, and that I like that card. It's kind of like your meeting notes, if you want to call it that, for those business nerds listening to this podcast, which I'm sure we have a few. But it's a great way to analyze. And it's funny because to a point you're taking down information, right? And if enough people do this and enough people use a standardized method, we could actually start gauging things and creating almost like a poll. We could almost create data that we could use to analyze and to predict how things are going to react and how society's progressing or degressing, if you want to call it that. I hate using those terms because I don't want to isolate religious people and say you're degressing or you're bringing society down, because I don't agree with that. But I do agree that some religious beliefs cause extreme amounts of harm. And any belief that you hold that you don't know why you believe or have a good confidence level that you believe it with good facts behind it, I believe those are harmful too. So,
well, and the main, sorry, one more point here is that I'm not necessarily, when I talk about maybe the desire to reduce a confidence in a belief, it's not because I necessarily want to eliminate beliefs or, eliminate religious beliefs or create atheists necessarily.
Suggest, yeah.
But the goal is to encourage people to be open to the idea of revising their beliefs if there is evidence that either contradicts their current beliefs or leads them in a different direction.
Because under scrutiny, maybe we need to be creating Christians. We don't know. We're open to anything.
We need to be finding the
or
truth.
Scientologists, right? So maybe saying, no, we can definitely pass that off as a cult. I'm pretty sure. And we actually, for anybody listening, we will be doing a Scientology episode. I don't know, probably in the next couple of months. It's a lot more work than I have time for right now. But as my work slows down towards December, that's kind of one of the. I haven't done an episode ever on Scientology.
You have to consult your lawyers.
Yeah, I have to consult my lawyers. Definitely. So as we close, I want to do two things. I always say, hey, give me where we can find you. I know I'm going to post links, but I like everybody to tell real quickly. And I heard there's a rumor there might be a book coming out that you guys might be part of.
Yeah, well, book is a strong word. The book that I always refer people to is a manual for creating atheists, because that is really where it all started. Dr. Boghossian was the one who came up with the term street epistemology and also described the way that you can apply Socratic method to exploring whether a particular belief is justified, as related to religious beliefs or other supernatural beliefs. So that's the book that we always recommend. Streetepistemology.com is another resource that folks can go to, and that's where there's tons of links to Anthony Magnabosco's channel, our YouTube channel, and other resources as well. There is a Facebook group that has over 1,000 members of people who are practicing street epistemology and or want to learn more about it, about how to have these conversations. So folks are welcome to join that group as well. And a smaller group within that Facebook group is working on an ebook, or I'm not sure exactly how we're going to release it yet, whether it's just going to be an official ebook or just a PDF or something, but that's going to be the Street Epistemology practical guide. So whereas the Manual for Creating Atheist book is about the the theory and the explanation behind it and the introduction to it, the Street Epistemology guide will be the practical methodologies that people have been putting those original methods into use, and the lessons learned from that. And that's really what has happened. I mean, in our own experience, we have changed our methods and approaches in just the 6 months we've been doing it. So the Street Epistemology practical guide will be
a Street Epistemology manual.
Yeah, based on folks who've actually been putting it into use.
2, right?
Yeah,
it's number 2. We'll just call it number 2.
So we're working on that. We hope to have it out by the end of 2015. The final resource I'd mention is the Atheos app, and that is going to be both for iOS and Android devices, I believe. It's in beta right now, and that is developed by Dr. Bogosian and other folks. And it's a step-by-step guide as well to learn the types of questions to ask to have more productive conversations. And we actually will have one of our videos, an exclusive video that's not on our channel, in that app as well.
It's a good video, and we've actually been part of the beta testing for it. And it's a great resource that actually puts you in a situation where you can answer questions or ask questions in certain circumstances that allows you to, from wherever you check your phone, actually be in the driver's seat for street epistemology.
Well, cool. Well, thank you guys both for joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure as always. And whenever your ebook comes out, you'll have to send me a message and say, "Hey, I got my ebook out, and can we do a 10-15 minute blurb on it?" And trust me, if you send us an advanced copy, I have a gentleman, my co-host, who is an avid reader, probably a little bit more than me, and he actually will read and review it for you, and we'll throw it up on our website and our Facebook page and review, and we'll also have you back on the show. So let us know when it comes out. We'll make sure that we can do a 10-15 minute little segment to have a conversation about the new book.
Oh, absolutely. We definitely will want to get the word out on that, because I think it's really going to help people put the street epistemology idea into practice in their lives.
Yeah. So make sure everybody stays tuned. When we come back, we're going to have more of Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll be right back, everyone.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Have a burning question? Want to share your thoughts with us? Think you know something that we would find interesting? Well, you're in luck. Send us an email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. All your thoughts, interests, and help, just to drop us a line. Send us an email, cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com, for anything that you want to tell us or ask us, and we'll promptly respond. Now, please enjoy the rest of the show.
During this week's GOP debate, a lot of nonsense went down. When the candidates spewed their predictable banter, CNBC, who hosted the event, didn't come off looking all that great either. All major low point was when the candidates were asked about their feelings on fantasy football spikes like DraftKings and FanDuel. Now, a lot of people, this article says, think that this is an issue worthy of being addressed when other major issues are going to go on ignored. And so this is what Chris Christie thought, one of the highlights of the whole thing. Are we really talking about getting the government involved in fantasy football? Christie said. We have $19 trillion in debt. We have people out of work. We have ISIS and Al-Qaeda attacking us. And we're talking about fantasy football? How about the government do what they're supposed to be doing? Christie continued after being showered with applause. Let's secure our borders, protect our people, and support American values. Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. As we close the night out, we couldn't leave without having a conversation about the Republican debate. And maybe it's just because with this show we've been able to be more political. Maybe it's because, for fuck's sake, I mean, what time is it? Oh, it's debate time. It's we got 1 year till we get a new president time. And it's all out war this time because we got both Democrats and Republicans vying for positions. But for me, one of the best articles I read, and we'll start with the humor, was from Peyton Oswald. And a lot of what he said is, he basically said, fantasy football, fuck you. I'm going to rate these candidates with D&D statuses. And the nerd in me just said, thank you. Thank you.
Patton Oswald's great. He is awesome.
So, I don't know if you watched the debate, Chris. I have a junkie habit. It's like crack cocaine for me.
No,
yeah, I can't help myself. It's like I got to see the train wreck, and I was pissed. I missed the first 30 minutes. Like I forgot it started at 8:30. I'm like, oh yeah, hey, look, oh shit, oh it's already been starting. Pause. Let me go through all the blogs. Go through the blogs. Find all the issues. Okay, now I can go back to it. I spent 20 minutes reading blogs just to catch up on the first half hour while I TiVo'd the damn thing so I could watch it later. But some of the highlights, there was a lot of highlights and a lot of down points, but one of the biggest points that was called out, and I believe it was Chris Christie who did this, and he said, why are we sitting here being challenged and being told to attack each other? All these questions are geared to attack each other, but yet you're giving Democrats questions about what would they do to change this, and where is their position on that, but yet you're continually pushing us to attack. And he went off on a 2-minute tangent, and finally they're like, well, you didn't answer the question, so you must forfeit your answer. And he's like, hold on, I want to answer this. And they're like, no, you're not going to. You just went on a rant about this. You're not going to get to answer this. And the best part about it was, to a point, they're right. Why are we watching them attack each other? I mean, seriously, I don't give a flying fuck whether Jeb Bush likes Rubio. I don't care if Ted Cruz wants to give brownies to the commentators, which, by the way,
oh man,
he offered marijuana brownies to the moderators.
I know.
Like Ted Cruz, we're talking Christian boy, Tea Party libertarian guy.
He's got ties to Canada, though, man. He's got ties to good old Canada. He's bringing the pot brownies on with his uncle.
Yeah. And, you know, he was trying to bribe them, but it was just amazing. Like, when he said that, I'm sitting here in my seat going, and I don't even know what to do. I'm trying to like beat my heart because my heart stopped. I couldn't believe a Republican offered a pot brownie to the moderators.
He probably thought he was making a funny joke in a GOP hall where everybody was just chirping crickets after that.
So in unseriousness, Pat Oswalt basically, like, he literally did. He went through and rated each candidate. So we'll start with Ted Cruz, and he basically said Ted Cruz is a dwarf Selleck with 3 charisma. And I'll be honest, in my opinion, Cruz did a lot better. He was a little bit more hard-hitting. He stayed away from a lot of the God focus. He kind of attacked some of the probably some of the conservative part of me, which is very little. There's very little conservative in me. But he attacked some of it in some of his speeches. Then they went out to John Kinesh, and I disagree with Pat on this one. He says he's a level 4 fighter with standard plate armor and a standard longsword with 10 strength. I will tell you what, Kinesh was one of the persons outside of his stance on women and abortion that I could align with a little bit. Not all the way.
I think he's the most moderate of anybody that's on that table.
So how about this? He not only avoided and said that this is not a topic to talk about the legalization of marijuana, and he believes it's a gateway drug. He said that. But what he said even more, he says, well, I have a policy on how we're going to fix student debt. You want to hear what his policy to fix student debt? And if anybody's listening, this will reflect on what we had a conversation in episode 2 or 3. I don't remember which one it was. Well, go back and listen to both episodes, because then you'll be able to, figure out which one I'm talking about. He basically said, well, you can graduate, and how to pay off your student loan? What we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, you can go work community service and we'll knock money off your student loan.
Oh, God.
What does that sound like? We had that fucking conversation already, and yet he's throwing it up on stage. And did I not already say that not only is it illogical, it's demeaning, it's a form of slavery?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's serfdom, man.
And I'm not saying we should have free education. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form.
Well, it's not free either. That's one of the terms that people use. Not free. It's tax paid.
Okay,
like it's
and
money,
I'm not even advocating for that. Like, I know Bernie is, and I get that, and I'm not against it. How about this? I'm not against it. I would be more inclined to want to know how Bernie's going to pay for that, because that's a steep price. But I'm more for regulating the motherfucking colleges, for going after some of these people that are building multi-million-dollar stadiums. So people donate millions of dollars to build a stadium, right? Mm-hmm. You go say, fuck football. Take that $1 million and dump it into the school system. Give more scholarships. Millions of dollars. Think about how much it costs to go to GRCC. It's like $30,000 a year, I think, if you live in city.
I would say more Grand Valley would be that cost.
No.
GRCC is pretty cheap, man. It's a community college.
Okay, so fine. I'll grant $10,000 and we'll just call it a day.
That's fine.
So, but think about how many million. If you had $1 million, how many times you could affect 10 grand? You could give fucking thousands of scholarships.
Yeah,
and you would still have money left over. And so, John Kanish, you've lost my respect. I thought you were like a closeted atheist for a while. You would be like that conservative atheist that we hear about. That's such a myth, kind of like Jeremiah and Joe. But I aligned with him on some things, and he was the one that didn't mention God. And guess what he closed with? And God bless. He had to throw that in there this time because he got accused of it last time. Because people were like, you sound kind of like a secular humanist. You kind of sound like somebody that doesn't believe in God. And he's like, oh, I'm Republican. I got to throw that in there. Come on. But he lost, and I'll never vote for him. I wouldn't vote for a Republican anyway.
Yeah, I know.
But if somebody put a gun to my head and wanted me to vote, I will never vote for him based on what he wants to do with education. He wants to enslave people again.
Yeah, it's terrible. Public education, using the taxpayers to tax funding to pay for public education is it's a pretty tough and steep issue. What Bernie Sanders is doing, he wants to do a small percentage tax on Wall Street transactions. And so since there's billions and billions and billions of those that happen all the time, most of them are computerized, putting a small fraction of a percent on that would bring in anywhere from $380 to $500 million or $500 billion a year, which Hillary Clinton's idea is around $500 billion to cover college education. So Bernie Sanders' idea is just taxing the mega rich Wall Street people when they do their tiny fraction of a percent. That's how it wanted to pay for it. So just giving you a little clarification on that. But yeah, no, you can't put people into community service to pay off their. What are they supposed to do when they're working a 40-hour work week? If they can get one nowadays, they're supposed to go do community service after they finish that. So they're working 60-something hours a week, and then they're working a second job because they still can't pay off everything. I mean, it's serfdom. You're removing a living wage and a comfortable life from people and making them just have to work off college without a guarantee of a job either.
Yep. Now, let's transition a little bit because let's talk about Trump, because Trump's obviously a highlight. He's a comedian, I guess, if you want to call him that.
I would call him a hypocrite. He wears a "Make America Great" hat again that's been made in China.
Well, before we get into Trump and what Pat Oswalt classified him as in the D&D realm, the funniest thing came out of that when they were attacking at the beginning, and the moderators were the one asking these questions. It wasn't as much the candidates who were attacking each other. I don't remember who it was, but I'm pretty sure it was Ben Carlson. Basically admitted, maybe it wasn't him. Somebody basically admitted they were wearing a Trump tie, and they had no issues with that. And somebody else said, well, it's probably made in China. And Trump just kind of smiles and laughs and nods his head like, yeah, you bet your ass it is. And he does. Yeah. And he doesn't even care. But I'll tell you what, Pat Oswalt rates him as a level 21 demi-leech with Lamarca's rod of disease and a cloak of revulsion. But I'm going to tell you what, he had one great statement. One great statement that he said. He is 100% personally funded, and he is 100% against super PACs. And if he were president, he would eliminate super PACs from the political process. And I'll tell you what, I agree 100% with that. I agree. I don't like him, but I do agree with him.
Well, yeah, what Donald Trump has done is he's removed the middleman. He's removed the pushy douchebags who run the super PAC. The people who have the mega corporations like the Koch brothers that are trying to buy a politician. Donald Trump just says, I'm a billionaire and I'm a politician. He's doing what Ross Perot tried to do with much more charisma, as much as you can say Donald Trump has charisma, because Ross Perot came off like an angry hardware store owner when he was doing it, just running around screaming and shrieking and being a goofball. Well, Donald Trump has been a celebrity for long enough with enough name recognition. This is the reason why last time he was considering running, this time he took it seriously and he got into the ballot. And obviously, the American people think that reality TV stars are qualified to be president. In an unfortunate validation of Mike Judge's movie Idiocracy, with Herbert Camacho, the president who shoots handguns off when he's addressing Congress. Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. Yeah, no. Trump was challenged by the whole immigration thing from Mark Zuckerberg, and I thought that was pretty cool. Well, for one thing, I do like the fact that he smiled about that Chinese tie, because one of his big rally points, he talks about bringing China to its knees, busting it down, and beating up China all the time. Yet he has his crap made there. So if that's not hypocrisy, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and all he's going to do, all his whole counter is going to be, well, it's in the system. If we fix the system, I wouldn't do that. And he said that about his bankruptcies, and he got challenged on his bankruptcies more than once. I mean, he was aggressively attacked on those, and I think he fared fairly well. But another person that stood out, and this person actually stood out, is the Carlene Fiorina. I don't even know how to say her last name. Fiorina. The ex-HP president. She was grilled very hard. I mean, people went after her. But I'll tell you what, in my opinion, while Pat Oswald only ranks her as a level 5 elf with a 1 ring of vampiric regeneration, I'm going to say she did fairly well in terms of being able to be addressed. Her answers were correct. She got challenged on why she failed as a CEO of Hewlett-Packard and why thousands of people lost their jobs. And she explained that you don't understand. I was held accountable on this amount of basis. This is what I was held accountable for. I didn't get to get away with anything. I could have been not just fired, but sued for what I did. If something came out wrong and it was my fault, I would have gone to jail for it. And so, she countered very well. It kind of felt like a conservative Hillary Clinton a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That's what I get.
The aspect of how she was countering it. And people were attacking her for no reason at first. And then everybody ignored her. Towards the end, it was just like, yep, well, we attacked you. You answered too good. So, and which is sad, because I'll be honest, she didn't strike me as somebody I would want as a president. I mean, it's not like a Sarah Palin, but she just wasn't the feel I got from it was she wasn't going to be able to run the country with enough empathy to actually do anything other than make business decisions. And if we were at the point of like Greece, I might be a little bit more considerate of her position.
Having been in big business, yeah. My big thing, like you said, I really like your use of the word empathy there. She walked away with some like $22 million severance package when she left with HP. And some 30,000, 35,000 people lost massive amounts of money, and possibly their pensions, their jobs. Like, she destroyed lives with some of her business practices. And I get it. That, she could have been held responsible for unethical business practices, and she would have been sued, and she would have had to deal with that. But let's face it, Enron was unethical too, weren't they? How many of those guys went to prison? So there's a buffer there.
No.
There's a buffer there. Like, these people say that they're going to be held accountable in this big business world. Bullshit. Straight up bullshit. And the only time you ever hear about people actually being held accountable, Northern Europe. They just sent some 26 bank people in Ireland, I believe it was, to like 70-something years in prison for across the board. I mean, this is what needs to be happening. They needs to be held accountable for big people like her. Then maybe she would have taken that $22 million and dispersed it across those 30,000 people who probably deserved it more than she did. But as far as that, for her, it's just untrustworthiness on that. I don't trust her to be able to make the decision for the little guy. I can see her watching out for herself and for her friends and the people who support her, but I don't see her watching out for the little dude.
No. And I agree with you. I don't think that is either. And I've always had a problem with that. And that's where, Bernie fits closer to my spectrum, if you want to call it. But we're not talking Democrats. We're talking Republicans. And so, Rubio came out swinging. Yeah. I still don't agree with him on almost every position he has. But he came out swinging. He was a lot more aggressive. He was friendly. He was very addressing of the crowd. He's
charismatic.
He was very charismatic compared to some of the other debates. He was very nervous in the other debates. This one, he was very confident. Mike Huckabee had a great point. Want to hear Mike Huckabee's great point?
Bring it.
We should spend more money on trying to fix the sciences so we can cure cancer, and then we could reduce the Medicaid and stuff like that. And he's right? we could fix things
Did
if we could
just say they want to spend more money.
They do, but only to cure cancer. And so I'll be honest, I hate Mike Huckabee.
I know, I hate him with a passion. When he was blocking Ted Cruz with so he could stand up next to Kim Davis on that stage, I just facepalmed so hard.
But Mike Huckabee also said this, and I do have to respect this. They were talking about Social Security, And that was a big thing because it's a big thing in the Republican Party because they're attacking the Democrats right now because the Democrats want to expand, and everybody's like, well, look, they sided with the Democrats because they came to a compromise, blah, 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 blah. Compromise means you're Democrat.
Work. They actually did work in the government.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but Mike Huckabee said this, and he said, why should veterans have to sacrifice and old people have to actually sacrifice their Social Security because we don't got no money? We owe them a debt. We owe them a ticket. We took their money and told them we'd hold it for them. It's not fair to them in any way, shape, or form that they should now lose that money. If we're America, if we're a great nation, we shouldn't be stealing from the elderly who spent years paying into the system. I agree with him. He didn't tell anybody how he would find that money or where he was, but he did commit to saying, I'm going to change this. This is wrong. Stop robbing the elderly of their Social Security. And while a lot of people are going to go, well, if you made millions of dollars, you don't need that Social Security.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go, okay, that's fair. That is a fair thing. And I know he includes those people to get their money. I get that. I get that that's a problem. And I'm not agreeing 100% with him. But I am agreeing we shouldn't cut Social Security. We shouldn't raise the Social Security age. We shouldn't do these things to go after the people that have already spent their lives paying in. And I'll be honest, I don't care if you are a millionaire. If you had to pay in your taxes, you do deserve your cut. Mm-hmm. Now, I think what you should be able to do, is we should offer tax incentives for people to forgo Social Security, even if it's only a small amount they're going to draw. If they forgoed it, let's give them a tax break. Let's say, hey, thank you for your service. You're doing America a service by not withdrawing extra money because you planned ahead. You had the ability. You were at the point in your life where you were privileged enough to be ahead of the rest. So I say give that person a tax break. But I agree with Mike. Why rob the people that put in? That's wrong.
It seems to me that would be fiscal conservatism. Like, you always hear them talk about that kind of thing. That seems to me that would be a cornerstone of fiscal conservatism, is taking care of the people who have paid their dues and they are, getting to the point where they need help. Like Ayn Rand, who actually was totally against all kinds of Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. Well, she ended up taking it when she was old too. So, I mean, just play that game, and everybody who puts their money in, I think that people who, like you said, have millions and millions of dollars, they should probably have to pay a little bit more in taxes, but we could talk more about tax reform in another debate, or maybe the next one that isn't on CNBC, where they're not talking about fantasy football. They'll talk about tax reform, and we'll actually hear what they want to do on that. One thing that I really, really liked reading through some of this stuff is Rubio wants to bring back vocational schools, and this is something that I've really, really, really wanted to talk about, and I think it's a really great idea, and I have not heard any Democrats talk about this. The Bush No Child Left Behind thing was really, really bad for the skilled trades in America. It was really, really bad for manufacturing, and we always hear about bring back more manufacturing jobs. You know what? There are a bunch of manufacturing jobs. Michigan right now has a ton of openings, and you know what? There's nobody to fill the damn positions. Nobody knows how to use welders. Nobody knows how to use bulldozers, plows, machinists. All that kind of stuff is hurting. Mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, all of the engineering, they can't find them fast enough. There's very little in the skilled trade, in the harsh manufacturing world where that people are interested in because they don't teach it in high school. They say that you should go to college immediately. Well, colleges don't concentrate on vocational stuff. Those are technical schools that do that stuff. So bringing back that kind of stuff, bringing back that kind of school helped the base part of the manufacturing base in America. And Rubio is the only one I've heard say that. I 100% support something along those lines where we talk more about that. I would love to hear what the Democrats have to say.
I agree. So as we wrap up and end the show out, there's some points that need to be made, and we didn't talk about Jeb Bush, and I don't want to spend any time having this conversation because I think he just ruined pretty much most of his chance to be the candidate for the Republican Party. He spent a lot of time attacking Rubio for his absenteeism.
He pissed off France.
Yeah, and we just have to sit there and look at it. And I mean, it's funny. The Wall Street Journal And I'm not a big fan of the Wall Street Journal, but the Wall Street Journal basically said that he should fire whoever the hell told him to have that conversation because they're wrong. He's just as guilty as that guy is. Half those people on stage are just as guilty. There's very few of them that have outside jobs outside the government that should not be out campaigning, but yet they all are. So, I mean, Trump, he doesn't have to. Caroline, she doesn't have to. They don't have government jobs where they need to. And, the level that came out of this debate, I think, was a lot higher. And I do agree that I'm glad they attacked the mediocrity of all these stupid questions, because I don't want to hear them. I think they're fucking dumb. Stop giving me bullshit questions. But one of the big things that came up that was even talked about was, well, look how unsubstantiated the Democratic debate was. Look how they didn't tackle problems. And look, I'm offering solutions. Every Republican on that stage said that. They said the same rhetoric, right? They said the exact same thing. They told everybody they're solving problems, and the Democratic debate did not. And I'm saying, hey, hold on. Not only is the Democratic debate the first debate, you can't compare a third debate to a first debate. That's not how it works. Especially when people's strategies are built upon starting at a base and building on it from there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it's unfair, and it's 100% unfair and illogical for any of these Republicans to think, oh, I'm going to use this as a great example. We got more substance than he got because we're, done this for longer. And I'm saying, shut the fuck up.
Well, I could definitely, I can refute that immediately. If you look at the data and the stuff that was dealt with between 5 candidates in the Democratic debate, first off, they all got to talk more. They all got to talk about their specific positions, what they think, and how they think. Each person had more, well, except Jim Webb. He didn't get to talk at all. We all remember that. But the Democratic debate, there was less people. They got into more substance. They did. It just, there's no way around it. In the time period for them, for that one debate, we got to where the Republicans are now. So they need to keep cleaving some of these people off. They need to get rid of some more. I mean, we've already seen 2 people out of the Democratic debate go down. So that means there's going to be 3 in the next debate. And how many? 10 in the Republican debate? There's no way. They're just like clown car still. They have to get rid of some of this if they even want to be effective at all.
Yeah. And the big thing is that what they're trying to do is compare their ability to try and provide tax plans and stuff like that to what the Democrats did. And it's just not comparing apples to apples. It almost feels like we're comparing apples to bananas.
Ray Comfort had to show up. The only thing I could say there is that I really would like to hear more of actual solutions from both sides. And I think that'll be coming for sure for the next debate. Because I've said this a few times that Bernie Sanders has already gotten to the point where he's, okay, here's the message, here's the problems. Now we need to know how you plan to fix them. And we need to hear that from everybody. Otherwise, it's just rhetoric. I can save this, I promise to do this, but if nobody ever says how they're going to do it, then people lose interest in those
exactly
people. Yeah.
Yep. So you guys were all probably expecting a hell discussion. We didn't have it. We're going to talk more about hell next week. We got a lot more planned next week, and we're going to talk about hell. Thank you guys for sticking around to everything that we have. The other big guests we have, and we're a skeptical podcast. We can bring Christians on. I have an interview scheduled for next week with Amy Bluer from the Project Semicolon. If you don't know what it is, go Google Project Semicolon right now, because I'm going to have a conversation with her as an atheist to a Christian is about how the project impacts me differently than maybe it impacts her. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, hell, and Project Semicolon. We'll be back next week with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Make sure you remember to prepare for the revolution. Have a good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.